I'm ready.
Here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome into the 2023 Cherokee County Football Preseason Show. I am Will Cooper, joined alongside Arthur Mosley, and we are here on the North Georgia Sports Network. Art, what does that even mean?
Well, I'm going to tell you, the North Georgia Sports Network means that, first of all, it means it's time for high school football.
Yes.
But let me back up a second. The North Georgia Sports Network is kind of the brainchild of you and I. I mean, who thought if we got together that we could come up with something that's exciting like this? But really, what we wanted to establish was a platform to highlight high school athletes in North Central Georgia. I know most folks are familiar with us on our coverage of Cherokee County. But we are building a platform where we want to highlight the student athlete, not just in Cherokee County, which is going to be our focus this year,
Absolutely.
but in North Central Georgia as we build out this platform. So I think that's our elevator pitch for the North Georgia Sports Network. But I'm very excited to be back on the preseason show with you as we get ready to talk to all of our high school coaches here in Cherokee County. We're going to be Cherokee County heavy, obviously, this season. And, again, like I said, we're going to do football, but our ideal is to branch out into other sports and really just give a platform to spotlight the student athletes in our local community.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll be here for a long time, I think, when it comes to football, but we're also going to be stepping into some other sports as well. So if you're a parent of any of those or a fan, make sure you stay tuned for that. We're not going to just be here August through December. We're going to be here for a long time and hopefully covering some things. So if you haven't checked us out yet, NorthGeorgiaSportsNetwork.com. That's NorthGASportsNetwork.com. We shortened it where we could. You're going to find a bunch of stuff there. You're going to find our schedule, which we're hoping to do broadcasts with. You're going to find some articles that we're going to be posting there. You're going to find the podcast link, which this is episode number 1 of the North Georgia Sports Report, which will be our podcast. And again, this is going to be a year-round thing, so make sure you stay tuned for that. And obviously, we're here talking a little Cherokee County preseason football. So I know it's exciting. We're going to have some more stuff coming up real soon, so make sure you check out the website because we have links to our Twitter account, which is now X is what it's called. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok for the kids because apparently that's a thing. We got it all. So make sure you check us out, and we will absolutely be able to help you out on that front. So thank you for being with us, and thank you for sticking with us here on the North Georgia Sports Network. Again, you're watching this on YouTube, so go ahead and hit the subscribe button on there because we have all sorts of things coming up in that regard as well. Art, anything else to add?
I think that's it, Will. I'm ready to I'm excited to get started. I'm about ready to get started. We've got a full lineup of coaches. We're also going to have another special guest. I don't want to give him away, but his head was probably too big to fit through the doors today, so we had to schedule a conference call with this gentleman.
Yes, that is the one and only Dave Garner. Dave, of course, if you've been around for a while, you know that he's a big name in Cherokee County. He's going to be joining us where he can. Obviously, he's still the play-by-play announcer for Valdosta State down in South Georgia, so we can't always schedule him in on Friday nights, but when he is around, we do like to get him. And, he's big-timing us a little bit here tonight, so we'll have to call and get him in. Of course, it's going to be the usual cast of characters, to steal a phrase from Dave. We're going to have Zach Gross, who's going to be in the booth with us a little bit as well. We're going to have Ronnie on the spot. Cooper, he's going to be our statistician for really the whole thing. So
Absolutely.
We're going to have him around, and then you'll see our two faces on most stuff, I think. So
Absolutely.
That may be a good thing, maybe a bad thing, depending on who you are.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, Will. I had a lot of fun over the last couple of years. In the podcast last year, I thought was a great success.
Yeah.
Looking forward to carrying that over to the North Georgia Sports Report podcast,
Yes.
which will be running. As you mentioned, this is episode number 1, and man, I cannot wait to get started. We've got this podcast. We'll probably take a week off in between and get ready to rock and roll on that first regular season game of the first game of the regular season.
Yes, absolutely. So make sure you stay tuned for that. We're going to go ahead and give Dave a call, I reckon, if he's ready for it.
I think so.
All right.
I think so. You want me to?
Yeah, go ahead and dial him up here. We're going to, again, this is all new, so we're going to be running through some of this as we figure it out. But we have tons of interviews coming up. We've got all 6 county coaches coming in. We're looking forward to talking to them about their programs. And the nice thing about this new format with the North Georgia Sports Network is we have no time constraints, and we don't have any obligations to anybody. We can sit here and talk till midnight. We probably won't because we have, jobs in the morning. But we can do whatever we want. So there's absolutely no problem with any of that as far as that is concerned. So we will make sure to connect you on all of those fronts as well. So if we have Dave.
Yes, we do.
All right, we have Dave live on air, so just keep in mind that you're being listened to.
What do you mean, man? I mean, are you expecting me to say something I'm not supposed to say? I mean, come on.
It was happened before. So
I just scarfed down a whole large pizza. I'm trying to pack on the few extra pounds, so that you've got something to talk about during the season.
Well, you don't really have to try that hard to pack on the extra pounds now, do you?
Not lately these days. It comes easy, trust me.
Well, Dave, did you get a chance to listen to our new intro there?
Yeah, no. I you know what? I've been sitting in traffic all day. Just got to a place where I could finally kind of decompress for a few minutes. So how it is around Atlanta. But so no, I did not get to hear it, man.
Okay.
So I will have to go back and check that out.
Yeah, well. We introduced the North Georgia Sports Network, and obviously, since you know what it is, just wanted to see your thoughts on it and see what you wanted to tell the folks about it.
Yeah, the thing that I wanted to say, I mean, first and foremost, I appreciate you guys having me on, and I'm excited for the North Georgia Sports Network. I think it's going to be an awesome thing for high school football. I know the focus for you guys, and for us, especially initially out of the gate, will be Cherokee County, but obviously it's I'm sure it's going to be one of those things that's going to just grow and take off. And, this is a passion project, as you've said. Primarily, obviously, you and Art are really getting this thing going. And I'm just excited for it. I mean, I think that, obviously, when you talk about high school football in the state of Georgia, I mean, it's really, you can put Florida and Texas and California and some of those states there. But as we all know, there's as many 5-stars that come out of Georgia as anywhere. And so, there's more and more attention, as we talk about every year, being placed on high school football. And so, the more media coverage, the teams have, the schools have, it's great publicity. I've always said that sports really are the best PR for a school, a university to have, because you're reaching so many people through athletics. And that's not to diminish the importance, certainly, of academics and other academic team clubs and activities, but sports really is one of those things that kind of becomes the face of your school, in the community, and when you go visit other schools, and when other schools come and visit you. So, to me, having, as many mediums as you can out there covering that, it only strengthens that brand, for that school. And so, obviously, what you guys are doing and going to be doing, and hopefully I'll have a small part in that, and I'm hoping I can join you guys certainly for some Friday nights, this year and beyond. And I'm excited about it, man. I'm really excited with what you guys have done, and I'm sure everyone else will be as well.
Yeah, well, Dave, we tend to shorten our answers. Obviously, you have not accustomed to that yet. Just take up all the time you want. I guess it's fine. No, I was telling folks it's nice, Dave, because we don't have any time constraints. We don't have any obligations to anyone. This can be whatever we want it to be, and it can be whatever the folks want it to be.
Right.
So as you mentioned there, and that was well put. I know I kind of threw you off there, but it was well put, and we're very excited to have you on board. I think people may be aware or may not be that we're all very close to one another, and we kind of view this as a brotherhood and a friendship, as much as we also enjoy getting to do things on a separate basis as well. But obviously a big thank you for joining us here today, and a big thank you for being a part of the North Georgia Sports Network. And yeah, you mentioned, getting you in on a couple things. We're hoping to get you in more than we were able to in the past. And, now that we're doing some other sports potentially, hopefully we can get you around in the winter and in the spring.
Yeah, definitely be great to go year round. Now I know. Now Art and I are pretty tight. As far as you're concerned, I mean, you go into a little bit of hibernation here and there, and I don't hear from you for a little while at a time. But no, in all seriousness, though, no, you're right. I mean, we have great friendship, not just a relationship, but a friendship, on and off the air. And I think that's what makes this so special, is to be able to do this with people that you genuinely enjoy being around, and. So, yeah, no, I'm definitely excited about it now, and I'm excited for the upcoming season. I think, obviously, you guys are going to be talking to coaches tonight and everything, and diving into the, individual schools and programs. And I can't wait. When I hang up, I will definitely be listening the rest of the way. So,
Dave, because we can do things how we want to do them on our show, I did want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about Valdosta State. And I know this is a Cherokee County high school football. I have not done any research on the Blazers, so I'm putting you on the spot here. But let the folks know up in North Georgia what the VSU Blazers down in South Georgia have coming up this year.
Yeah, the thing about it is that, there's so many opportunities for kids to play football now that, not necessarily around when I was coming through school. Valdosta State obviously has had one of the premier programs, especially in South Georgia. They kind of consider themselves the anchor school, if you will, of South Georgia, and have really played off of that. And, they've won several national titles, as we know, and they have a great tradition down there. And obviously that is one of the things that has taken me out of some Friday nights is the fact that I have had to travel because I do currently work with the Blazer Sports Media doing their home football telecast. And but yeah, it's really, there's a lot of things up in the air. I know we're going to talk about it with our high school teams as well. But a coaching change last year. This will be the second year for Tremaine Jackson, who comes in. But a lot of fresh faces. You got to remember the 6th year of eligibility, that we had due to COVID. You had that extra year of eligibility on top of the redshirt year. Well, if you think about it now, a lot of those guys are starting to, kind of matriculate out of the program. And so I know for the Blazers, they've got a lot of guys, particularly their, all-conference quarterback and Ivory Durham, and a guy who's just a dynamic playmaker who's moved on. They've all, basically executed that final year of eligibility. And so now you're going to have a lot of new faces in Titletown this year. And it'll be really interesting to see what happens really on both sides of the ball. They had some transfers last year that came in defensive side of the ball, but they really, as a unit struggled. So I think as far as the dynamic goes, as far as the game plan, I don't think it's going to change much. I think the biggest question is just going to be the personnel. Who's going to be those guys lining up? Isaiah Flowers, some different guys at running back, I think are going to do a good job. They're going to have a good rotation there. But the biggest question will be up front. But I'm excited. I've got to jump into my research. We're right at a month away now. We're less than a month, really, from kickoff of the college football season. Certainly the high school football season. There's scrimmages as early as, this week, I think, for some schools, or maybe next week. But, so, yeah, it's an exciting time of year, man. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, it's our favorite time of year. I think I speak for all three of us.
No doubt.
So, yeah, we're definitely looking forward to that. Dave, I'm going to put you on the spot before we let you go here, and just real quick. Obviously, you're a slightly removed from Cherokee County, not being so tied in. So let's go ahead and drum up some controversy that you can answer on Twitter later. Who's your pick for the number one team in Cherokee County in 2023?
Oh man, I tell you that's a tough
and
one.
No political answers here.
Okay, no, I will give you my. I'm not going to give you the. It could be this or it could be that. No, I'll give you a choice. I mean, you really are putting me on the spot because as the North Georgia Sports Network, we don't pick sides. I
exactly.
mean, we are, non-part. But I would have to say, from what I've seen, what I've read, and I know it's early and there's a lot of things that could change. But I think I'd have to go with the Sequoia Chiefs right now. I really do. I think I would have to give Sequoia the slight nod, just based on, what I've seen, who they have coming back, just kind of looking at the general things on paper. But I mean, here's the thing, no one's even played their first scrimmage yet. So until they throw the pads on and actually start popping each other, it's hard to tell. But I'm gonna go ahead and give you one. I'm gonna right now. I'm gonna fly with the Chiefs and see how that goes.
Well, I'll give you that. You did at least answer that. I mean, you tried to dress it up there on the back end, but, everybody got the bulletin board material out of it.
I mean, I love Coach Shaw over at Cherokee, obviously. In fact, there was an article about him, I think, in the AJC about, talking about all the things that these coaches have to go through away from the field in the preseason, all the, refurbishing equipment. I mean, all the things that have to happen before football season to start. So all these guys are working hard. They're all putting in the hours. They're all putting in the sweat. I'm hoping for a good year all around for Cherokee County.
We are hoping so too. Dave, any final thoughts before we let you go, my friend?
No, I think that that it'll be interesting to see the emphasis from officiating standpoint this year. Obviously the GHSA if any of our local teams are fortunate enough to make it to the state championship, having the element of instant replay, with the games being moved to Mercedes-Benz Stadium, I think this year, I mean, a lot of headlining things I think that are going to pop up throughout the season from a state level. But I'm excited to bring it a little bit closer to home and to kind of, kick off the inaugural season of the North Georgia Sports Network. Man, I'm excited about it. I know other people will too, and want to encourage folks to follow. You guys have already launched several social mediums, channels, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all those things. So, I guess it's X now, isn't it? It's not Twitter anymore.
That's what I said.
But,
I said we're going to exit out or whatever it's called.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. But anyway, you don't send a tweet anymore, I don't guess. You send something else.
I think you post it. It just says post. So I don't know if they're going to name it something. I mean, it's kind of boring, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. But you guys got all the links, obviously the website, which is kind of the big host and everything. So yeah, I'm excited for it. I hope everyone else gets excited about it too and supports it.
All right. Well, Dave, thank you for being with us on the first ever broadcast on the North Georgia Sports Network.
Our first
buddy.
ever interview, Dave. So we're honored that you would take that mantle and run with that for us.
I'm extremely honored. I can say that with being serious. But yeah, no, definitely honored to be here. Appreciate you guys having me.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you very soon, and hopefully we'll hear you on a broadcast coming up.
Sounds good, man.
All right, man.
Thanks,
See ya.
Dave.
All right. See y'all.
All right. There was Dave Garner, as we mentioned. Here's the thing about Dave. He's obviously very busy. Obviously, we think a lot of him. Don't tell him we said that. But we do think a lot of Dave, and he's very important to us. But at the end of the day, he's got obligations, and, we want him to be able to fit in where he can. And so we're very grateful that he was able to take the time and kind of join us
tonight.
Bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
He's listed. He's one of the founding members, if you will, of the North Georgia Sports Network.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is. Speaking of founding members, we got to talk about one of our sponsors here as we broadcast from the Foundation Financial Insurance and Wealth Management Studios in the heart of downtown Canton.
Yes.
We'd like to thank our sponsor for having us out to their place to do this podcast.
Yeah, and that's the reason we're able to be commercial free here tonight. So there's not going to be any breaks, any commercials. We're rolling through it, and a big thank you to the guys at Foundation Financial for allowing us to do that. We're hoping that we can partner with some businesses out there as we carry on through the rest of the season. And the nice thing again is that with no obligations, we can fit in ads and those breaks and things that you're used to hearing regularly. Not going to be so regulated anymore. We kind of can go with what we want. We're not going to have to miss any action, do anything in particular. So with that being said, there's a large portion out there of this that involves you, the people. So if there's something that we're doing or not doing that you want to see not do or do, all you got to do is let us know. We're very easily accessible. We have all the contacts like Dave mentioned on the social medias. Just let us know what you would like to see. Run some ideas by us. Not promising we're going to do everything that's out there, obviously. But we do want to make this a platform for the people is really the goal of this. And that's kind of what we set out to do here. And hopefully you see that translated through what we put out.
Absolutely. Well, we've got about 10, 12 minutes before our first interview scheduled, and that's going to be Coach Matt Kemper of the Etowah Eagles. But I kind of wanted to just switch gears a little bit, get your preliminary thoughts on the upcoming season. What things are you excited to see, or any interesting storylines this season for these 6 Cherokee County teams, from your perspective?
Yeah, well, I think there's a ton. I think, first of all, Woodstock with Dan Devine coming back to Cherokee County, I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic for Woodstock. Obviously, a 22-game losing streak for those guys, that doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good for anybody in the county. I think when, rising tides raise all ships. And unfortunately for Woodstock, they've been falling behind a little bit. But I'm interested to see what they're going to come out with. They have a lot of talent, a lot of those names that people may not be familiar with outside of Cherokee County. But I think within Cherokee County, people realize that there are some pieces there, and it's going to be interesting to see how they can put those together. I think that's one. I think number two is you see some teams that are starting to rise. I think that when you talk about Etowah, you talk about Sequoia, and you talk about Cherokee, those are 3 teams that can really look at 2022 and focus on 2023 and view that as building years. Cherokee was able to go 3-8, which again to a lot of people doesn't sound fantastic, but when you look at the fact they made the playoffs and you look at the last end of the season there, very impressive run. Sequoia, same thing, right? You kind of got started with that season, all the injuries that happened, you're thinking, what is Sequoia going to end up being? And then they end up giving South Paulding a run for their money in the playoffs.
Absolutely.
The defense is legit. And then the same thing for Etowah, right? They're kind of the opposite. They're that high-flying offense, Xavier Mahoney, Reese Weir, the Buffalo, all these guys that come to be part of that offense that made it so dynamic. It's going to be interesting to see how they develop and those younger guys, how they can grow a little bit. So I think those are some storylines there. And then obviously we're missing out on two teams being River Ridge and Creekview. Creekview to me is going to be like, it's going to be a question mark, right? There's a lot of things we don't know about Creekview. We're going to get some clarity on that with Coach Williams coming up in just a little bit. And then for River Ridge, kind of the same thing. You know, they relied so heavily on guys like Jackson Head last year who were able to drive them a couple of wins. It's going to be interesting to see what happens this year without those solidified names. Obviously, they're still returning some pieces there. I don't want to discredit that at all. But on the grand scheme of things, when you think about River Ridge and Creekview, there's a lot more that we don't know than we do know. So for me, I'm kind of approaching those two teams with a little bit of a cautious look, and I'm interested to see how they can develop coming up into this season.
Yeah, those are all great points, Will. You mentioned, these teams, the run that Cherokee put on their playoff run. Will they be able to extend that this year? Will we get more than 3 teams into the postseason this year in the county? Is there an opportunity for a 4th team and a 3rd team in that Region 6? I think in Region 6, 6A, we know that Rome is that.
Yeah.
I don't even want to call them an elephant in the room. They're about as dominant as in a region as you can get, and so much talent over there in the Rome area, and they do a great job with that program. But is there a way to knock off a team like Alatoona, who brings in a new head coach? They're changing up their system there. I'm partial to that old offset formation.
It was fun.
They ran back in the 40s when I was a kid, but
right.
An opportunity maybe for a Creekview or a River Ridge, Sequoia, Etowah to jump in there and see, or is there room? I think it's probably almost impossible to say that Rome would not be in the playoffs, and I'd have to say they're a prohibitive favorite in this region from that. But I'm interested to see that when you talk about Cherokee, I'm interested to see offense coordinator Kevin Burnett in his second year. We've got a host of second-year starters at quarterback throughout the county that I'm excited to see some maturation of some of the offenses there. And then a couple of players that I think stand out. You've got Andrew Rosinski. I was about to say Jackson Head. He's off at Gardner-Webb.
Yes.
He will be off at Gardner-Webb. Jackson Hancock is who I was trying to think of.
There you go.
Just recently signed with the Missouri Tigers. Congratulations to Jackson. And then Andrew Rosinski headed to North Carolina, the left tackle for the Creekview Grizzlies. So 2 high major men signing offers to go play high major football. That is excellent. Who was the next crop in that group?
Right.
You talked about Mahoney, you talked about the Buffalo. One last thing I'll bring up, Will, just an interesting storyline. This is a side note. Will we see a 1,000-yard rusher in the county this season?
Is that a question? You want me to answer that?
It's rhetorical at this point.
Can I give you a name that you're not thinking of that you should be thinking of for that mark?
I would think Mahoney would be the first name I would think of, or Weir, but I think you're going to go in a different direction.
I'm going to go Camden Cox.
Yeah,
I think
the
sophomore now.
Yes.
I really liked his freshman year. I think you give that River Ridge offensive line with the likes of John Feletra anchoring it. I like that scheme. And then you also have some playmakers when you talk about Spector and Coughlin and those guys to kind of keep defenses honest. And Camden Cox, I think, could have a really big sophomore year. I wouldn't be surprised if he's able to get to 1,000 yards. I agree with you. I think that Etowah has the potential to have a 1,000-yard rusher and an 800-yard rusher, and Mahoney and Weir. I agree with you that I think that when it comes to those dynamics, there's some opportunity there. But at that running back position, you mentioned the quarterbacks having 5 returning. The running back position is like completely flipped. We don't know where a lot of teams are going to go to running back. You talk about Creekview, obviously Isaac Hubert leaving. What are they going to do? Who's the new guy? Who's the new stable of running backs there? Sequoia has some options, which is a luxury to have.
Sure.
Ian Mariah was a guy that really came on strong at the end of last year. Obviously, Tyler Bell's been there. It seems like Tyler Bell's like a 6th-year senior. We've been calling him for years. But he's a fantastic back. And then if you're, 3rd and long, Jackson Hancock's always an option as well. And I'm sure there's a ton of names that we don't know yet that we will learn as we progress. Etowah's got their positions locked up, and I would say River Ridge with Camden Cox. And Brandon Burdett ran the ball a little bit. It'll be interesting to see if they rotate him in. But Woodstock, do they have a running back they feel really good about? We don't know yet.
Right.
It kind of depends. So for me, there's a lot of position groups out there that we don't know the answer to yet, but hopefully by the end of the night, we can get some answers to some of those.
I think we will, man. I'm looking forward to it again about 5 minutes out from our first interview. Coop, last season, again, we watched 3 teams go into the playoffs in early exit. What, in your opinion, would it take for one of these county teams to make a push past the first round this season?
Well, I think there's different answers, and I'll go through them for our 3 Cherokee County teams. I think Sequoia's answer is they need just a touch more offense, just a touch. Mm-hmm. That defense is legit. It's super good, and they had a really awful draw in the playoff. To be honest, South Paulding was very good. We were there for that game.
Sure.
And Sequoia came out and put it on them for a half. I mean, it was impressive, but then they kind of started wearing on him, and they had a couple of options. I'm trying to remember the running back's name. Wilcox.
Was it Paul Wilcox?
Jeremiah Wilcox.
Jamarian Wilcox.
Jamarian Wilcox. And he kind of started to get a little hog wild there at the end. Mm-hmm. River Ridge, for me, was a team that we talked about all season last season. You could not be the 4th seed because you're going to go face Langston Hughes.
Yeah.
And obviously Langston Hughes did what Langston Hughes did. I mean, even they ran through Rome. They ran through a lot of teams. So we kind of knew what was going to happen there, unfortunately. For me, River Ridge is again, they're a playoff team last year. They're starting to build a little bit of a playoff pedigree. Mm-hmm. Just going to be interesting to see because all of those guys from 2019, that run they had, 2020, I mean, they're gone. There's nobody left that was on that team. Jackson Head was kind of the last guy in that rotation. Group, yeah. So now these guys don't really know that great success anymore. It's a new room. So who's going to fill in that void? I don't know the answer to that. That'll be something to see. And then obviously, when you talk about Cherokee to me is the biggest wild card out of the entire county because they obviously have a lot of exciting pieces, and they graduated some pieces as well. The defense is going to be a question. They have a history of having really good linebackers. They're going to need that again. They're going to have a history of having really good defensive ends, and they're going to keep those guys. They have a couple of returning guys in that front. The secondary going to be a big question mark. But I think offensively, Cherokee is going to be one of the most exciting teams. I think they have a really deep receiving core. I think that Tanner Savasier is going to grow a lot. And I think that Wyatt Tash at the tight end position is very important to them. The question is running back, right? We talk about Christian Irwin. He was a guy that had some really good looks last year, especially in the Cartersville game. They relied on him late. But injuries really, really bit that running back room. And then they ended up going back to Zy Johnson, who was transitioned to safety last year. It's going to be interesting to see who they want to go with to run the ball. And I think that when you start to get some of those answers, we can get some pictures. And my message to the fans out there is the same message that we have to send to ourselves. At the end of week 1, let's not overreact because we do this every year where we say, oh, this team got beat by 30 points. They're obviously, going to be the best team in the state. Or this team got, beat them by 30 points. We overreact. And it takes till about week 3 or 4 to know what's really going to happen. And then even then, you don't necessarily know what's going to happen in the region standings and then, injuries and all that. But if you're a fan of one of these teams and you get through the end of the first 2 games, you're sitting here week 3 and you're thinking, gosh, we're 0-2, man, this is just relax. Everything's fine. Let's just get back to the median a little bit because we have to do the same thing as, broadcasters. And when we analyze these things, it's real easy to have recency bias and say, I told you that position was going to be a problem. Well, everybody just relax on that front. I think that would be my message to fans going into this season.
Absolutely. It's take a deep breath. We'll
be all right.
We'll get to region play, and we're about 1 minute to the top of the hour. Let's see if we can get Coach Kemper on the phone.
Let's go for it.
Let's get it started here.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, Etowah last year 5-5. I think for them, they kind of had that up and down. They started 4-0, and then region play was really tough for them. I think Etowah is just a couple pieces away. I think that they can really figure things out here and start to develop Mahoney more as a passer. I know that he's a great runner, and I know that they also have relied on a couple of other pieces there. Wide receiver group, fantastic. I really like that they're bringing most everybody back from last year. We talked about Reese Weir. That was fantastic. As we have Coach Kemper calling in here, or we're calling him.
Hello.
Hey, Coach Kemper, it's Art Mosley and Will Cooper with the North Georgia Sports Report. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm great. How are you guys?
We are doing well. Coach, we are live on our podcast, our Cherokee County preseason kickoff, and we're excited to have you. You're our first coach interview of the evening. And
wow,
man,
I didn't realize we were live. That's a lot of pressure.
Well, Coach, you've been doing this for a while, so we know that you're gonna ace.
Or two.
Get you some deep breaths in there, Coach.
Yeah.
Well, Coach. First of all, again, thanks for joining us here on the podcast, and thanks for kicking us off. We're going to toss you a softball to get warmed up. You're 2 days or 3 days in, into fall camp. How are things going so far?
Well, I mean, obviously everybody's dealing with heat issues, and we've chosen to go in the mornings this week to try to keep our kids safe, still get the work in. But they've responded very, very well. They're excited. They're working their tails off, and we're hopeful and cautiously optimistic and moderately positive, I guess. Is what everybody is this time of year, right?
I like that. Coach, I do want to revisit last year just for a minute, and then we'll get talking more into this year. But last year was obviously a big step in the right direction for the program, I feel like, and I think a lot of fans feel really good about the direction you're headed. Could you talk a little bit about what the approach has been to this year with the experience that you had last year and some of the growth that you saw over the course of last season?
Well, I mean, I think our kids responded very, very well. I mean, obviously this was a schedule that we were able to put together, and tried to steer towards some teams that we could be more competitive with in the non-region. Not going to North Cobb and things like that. And obviously being a 6A team is a huge help to us, and we're playing, for the most part, very familiar opponents with playing the rest of the county. And guys that we would have played non-region had we been in a different region. So that was a big step for us. And now, the challenge, that was kind of the easy step in a lot of ways. So the challenge now is, we were, for the most part, competitive in most of those region games with the exception of Rome there at the end and kind of River Ridge. But the challenge now is, we are hopeful to try to win region games and be one of those 4 teams that plays in week 11. And, our kids are excited about that. We graduated some really good football players and some really good young men. But really the nucleus of our team is returning. And so we're excited going into the season.
Well, Coach, you mentioned some of those guys, and I think we mostly know the offense. We're familiar with those names, and they obviously are a very dynamic bunch. But I want to focus on defense for a minute. You guys are graduating a lot. You talk about guys like Frank Mosley, Jameer Maxime. I could go on and on about some of the pieces that you lost there. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the younger guys that you have seen develop on the defensive side of the ball that you're really excited about seeing this year?
Well, and even too, at the same time, I'm going to mention, that since we came to Etowah and knew him a little bit even before coming to Etowah, Steve Sperry became our defensive coordinator after year 1, and you won't find a finer man on this planet. He does things the right way, does it for the right reasons, and he's been coaching a long time too, and he stepped away from coaching, and that allowed us. We went after our number 1 draft pick, and that was RVA Smith over at Allatoona. We had coached against each other multiple times when he was at Osborne. And, we're cut from the same mold. I mean, he is all ball. He's 24/7 football. He works his tail off. He demands a lot from the kids, from a performance and an execution standpoint, but at the same time, he does the same things that Coach Superior and I had focused on before, holding kids accountable, make sure they're doing the right things on and off the field. And, the defense has kind of a little pep in their step, and they've learned a lot. And obviously now they're going to get the chance to hopefully go out there and show what they've done. But, we did lose a lot of kids on defense, with both those corners, Frank and Jameer, and D linemen like Doran and Joseph Lago. But we feel really good about the kids that we got returning. Draven Cole really came on at the end of the year and really played his best football in games 7, 8, 9, 10. So he's been an anchor for us up front on defense. and the other guy that he had missed a couple, 3 games with some different injuries. But Josh Harding is a really good football player. He's got great instincts. He's been, on that learning curve, trying to get new terminology, trying to get new scheme. But he's an anchor in there for us. We're young man that played some nose guard and 3 technique for us a year ago, to Jean Fabian. Great kid in the weight room. He's strong. He's got great leverage. Kind of anchors the middle there for us. And then a young man that we're hoping can have a breakout season is Grant Griffith, the defensive end. He's long. He can run. He's got a good football IQ. And it doesn't hurt that, Coach Smith's son, who started that outside linebacker for him in Altoona last year, is coming over here because his dad's working here. And, he brings some experience in the system, and that's helped our other guys adapt. And a guy that had a really, really great spring was Vinny Piscini at safety. And I think this scheme has allowed him to kind of flourish. And, he can run downhill. He can be the guy back there that's the sweeper and cover all 53 and a third. We've got some young corners that really haven't had a lot of experience, but they're talented kids athletically. And, we feel real good about where we're at with it. Our defense staff's done a good job bringing those guys along, getting them to this point where now we're going to start looking at opponents and preparing for games.
Coach, we can't talk about you guys or Etowah in general without flipping the script and talking about your offense. You had arguably one of the most exciting players, not just in 6A, and I believe he took home the award for most outstanding offensive player, but one of the most exciting players in the county and probably north central Georgia, and Xavier Mahoney. Alongside him in the backfield, you had the Buffalo Reese Weir, who we mentioned before we came on air. And then, Tate Nelms, a guy who I feel like we've been asking you about for the last 10 years. I know you hadn't been in Etowah for 10 years, but I feel like we've been talking about him that long.
If we can figure out a way to get him one more.
But looking at that offense, and you guys average, I think you bumped that offensive output to about 22.8, 22, 23 points a game last season. What's the next step, not just for Mahoney and Weir and Nelms, but that offense as a whole? What's the next step for you guys to help reach that next goal, which is to play in Week 11?
Well, I mean, we were hoping to keep that a secret, but really you guys just let that out of the bag. But, people are going to have to game plan, take Mahoney away, and that just creates opportunities for other guys. Malone Piscira had a really, really good sophomore season at slot receiver. Once they caught 40 or 50 balls, Mason Mancini was, I think, second team all-region performer, caught 20, 30 balls, and, those guys are going to have to make plays. And hopefully we can, keep getting better, keep executing, and get to a situation where there's just a lot of people contributing. And then Mahoney can get his when people are concentrating on other folks. And, we've worked hard in the spring and in the summer trying to be a lot more balanced, and, stretching the field vertically but also horizontally, getting the ball on the perimeter, because certainly people will. I mean, Sequoia, for example, did a great job last year of trying to take him away, and I'm sure that's going to be a blueprint for a lot of people.
Well, Coach, we appreciate you taking some time to speak with us today. That we're going to wrap up with and let you maybe get back to dinner or maybe get back to game planning for your first opponent of the season. Coach, you've got I won't say favorable, but a manageable schedule pre-region, and then once you get into region play, you all have your work cut out for you. We're looking to being over there at Etowah at least once this season and broadcasting, and we're excited to one, continue to see that offense. That was so so refreshing, exciting to see your young team, and we're looking forward to seeing them this season and also seeing what Coach Smith and that defense has in store.
Well, we appreciate it. I'm telling you, folks don't understand how fortunate we are to have you in Cherokee County in particular. You guys, you're always fair, you're always unbiased. But the thing that, listening to your podcast, listening to your broadcast of games, the thing that always shines through to me is you guys are all about the kids. And, you find the stories, you find the human interest things, and you do a great job promoting the kids and making it fun for them. And I know they look forward to listening to you too.
Well, thank you very much for that, Coach. That's what we're here to do. So we're glad that you guys can tell that, and we're very thankful for the partnership that we have with you and the coaches and the school as well. Well,
anytime you need me, just call me up. My mom always told me I had a face for radio, so this is my natural medium.
Well, Coach, we're cut from the same cloth, and if that's the case.
No, I've heard you guys are the best looking guys in podcasting.
I'll take it.
Coach Kemper, thanks so much for spending some time with us this evening, and best of luck, and we'll talk to you a little bit later on in the season.
Well, thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much to Coach Kemper. It's it's kind of funny when we first met Coach Kemper and first talked to him 3 years ago at this point. It was one of those things where he was pretty buttoned up. Mm-hmm. And it didn't seem like he knew what we were all about yet.
Sure.
And then last year he really started to open up and kind of joke around with us a little bit more, and that dry sense of humor really shines through. So we're very thankful for Coach Kemper and very appreciative of those kind words. That was nice of him to say as well.
Absolutely. And right on, we want to make sure this is about the student athletes and them getting the recognition. And I think one of the conversations we always talk about, when we talked about the two D1 players, Hancock and Rosinski, headed on to play next season, that's awesome. But some kids are just going to play 4 years of high school football, and then they're going to either go to college or go to a trade or start their own business, and that's cool too. We just want to celebrate. Catch these kids doing well, and on Friday nights and otherwise, and provide a spotlight that'll it's our version of ESPN or SEC Network or
whatever you want to call it. I don't know. We're pretty niche, I feel like. But absolutely right. Well, we got about 8 minutes, so why don't we jump into the Etowah Eagles a little bit here?
Sure, absolutely, Will.
So 2023, we'll pull up the schedule here for you as we talk more about what you can expect from this team. You mentioned that out-of-region schedule, Lassiter, Cherokee, Forsyth Central, Centennial. That Cherokee game last year was an instant classic.
Yeah, the overtime game. The thing that stands out for me is when we were introduced to Xavier Mahoney on that kickoff return coming out of halftime, that really swung the tide of the game. I thought in Etowah's favor, got them jump started a little bit there.
Yeah, that was a very fantastic game. Glad we were there for that one. You look at the rest of that: Lassiter, Forsyth Central, Centennial. Are they world beaters? No. I think that we'll see what happens. You never really know with Forsyth Central. They might have a really good year. It'll depend on what they bring back.
Yeah, and not just that. They have a new head coach this season, so that they're undergoing a transition as well. You look at a team like Lassiter, who's going to be replacing a quarterback. Centennial's going to have a new head coach, if I'm not mistaken. Coach O'Sullivan is moving on to Pope to replace Coach Tab Griffin. And you mentioned Cherokee. The oldest rivalry in Cherokee County is the Etowah Cherokee rivalry. Cherokee's been playing ball since, I believe, 56, Etowah since 73, and someone will correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think those numbers are right. But week 2 of the season, you got the city of Canton versus the city of Woodstock, and they'll be doing battle over at Tommy Baker Field, and that'll be an exciting one. I think we'll find out a lot about both of those teams in week 2 of the season.
Yeah, and then you round out that region schedule at Sequoia to kick off the region schedule. That's going to be a tough one at Skip Pope. Then, obviously, everyone has the bye week for that fall break on September the 22nd, so none of the teams will have games then. And then they have the game against Creekview, which last year was played on a Thursday. That was a ton of fun, a little bit more high scoring than Creekview probably wanted it to be. Obviously, Creekview came out on top at the end of that one. But that'll be at Eagle Mountain, so that'll be a little bit friendlier of a game for the Eagles. And then another bye week before they face Woodstock in the Battle of Town Lake on rivalry week. Again, we talked about don't really know what to expect from Woodstock yet, but we always know that when you have those teams, this is like the biggest punch. They're looking at that game, they're looking at that schedule, and they're saying, this is when we can make our mark. So that'll be a game to watch for sure. And then at Allatoona versus River Ridge, and then at Rome. So tough break there at the end, having to go to Allatoona and to Rome. But all of that being said, at the end of the day, Etowah finished 5-5 last year, but I think you heard Coach Kemper there mention it. It was that region record that really bit them at the end, and they would like to get a couple more games, and they were within striking distance against River Ridge and against Allatoona. You flip those 2 wins, and all of a sudden we're talking about a second seed, third seed team.
Yeah, and the region standings did get a little messy last season with a couple of teams dropping a couple games we weren't expecting. River Ridge ending up in a tie. River Ridge Creekview ended up in a tie. River Ridge, of course, owned the tiebreaker,
right.
And able to edge out Creekview to get to the postseason. So I think you take care of business. You mentioned the Allatoona game, a game that Etowah was up, towards the end of the game, and Allatoona put together a great drive.
Right.
And Allatoona will return their starting quarterback, but they're going to be missing a good amount of meat, as Dave Garner would say, on
yes.
that defensive front. Man, you talk about the Rhino, and then those 2 defensive ends they had, Odinjor and the other one's slipping me. I've conveniently forgotten Allatoona's defensive line because that was a nightmare. One of the last games we did, they were just so dominant, which is a good thing for Etowah as Coach Smith brings that defense philosophy over to the Eagles, and that'll be exciting to watch. Well, we talked about previously about Sequoia's defense, and Etowah, might be one on the rise here in the county.
Well, I think Etowah last year was just a couple of defensive plays away from really being a great team, and I think that if they can adjust that and they can find a couple of pieces there, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't see the offense taking a step back this year, so you just need that defense, just that little extra step just to get above average there, and I really, really, really would like the Eagles as they move into this season and seeing what they can do. Yeah,
it'll be exciting. You mentioned that linebacker position is going to be helped out with Coach Smith's son going alongside Joshua Harding. You mentioned Draven Cole, a guy's name who we mentioned a lot. Depth is a big question for me for Etowah along that defensive line. Yeah, that's going to be the biggest kicker because if they can find a way to just get some guys to rotate in. I don't even mind when teams do the first down, second down, bigger guys, and then third down you get the speed. I don't mind that. I don't have a problem with I don't see an issue with that. So you don't have to have that bona fide 3-star defensive end or 2 of them, which they had at Allatoona, which is always a luxury. Sure. But I think you need to find some pieces there. And I agree with Coach Kemper's assessment there that Draven Cole really came on strong at the end of the season. And then, Grant Griffith is a guy that I've kept an eye on for the last couple seasons. I really like that they put him at defensive end. I know they tried him at tight end. And I think that if you can just solidify that position right there, you're going to need to find a corner. That's the other thing I would say is they're going to need to, again, they replaced 2 really, really, really good corners in Jameer Maxime and Frank Mosley. That's not going to be easy to do. But then I also agree, Vinny Piscini, watching his tape in that spring game and watching some of the camps that he's done, he's a bit of a heat-seeking missile back there. He's no slouch. I think he stands 6'2", 6'3", somewhere in that neighborhood, 190, 200 pounds, and he's a heavy hitter. So I'm really excited to see him. Everybody knows that I love secondary play, and nothing better than a big, tall safety who can really bring the lumber. So I would keep an eye on him for sure. Well, Will, we're about 2 minutes away from our time with Coach Dan Devine, the not newly minted, but this will be his inaugural season as Woodstock head coach, as he was named head coach back in April, if I'm not mistaken, earlier this year. And so what do you say we try to go ahead and give Coach Devine a call? Let's give him a shot. All right. This will be his first introduction to us, too, so We'll have to see as we've got him queued up here.
Hello, it's Coach Devine.
Hey, Coach Devine, it's Art Mosley and Will Cooper from the North Georgia Sports Report. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you men doing?
Doing good, Coach.
We're doing well. Coach, you are live on our podcast, our Cherokee County preseason podcast. First of all, thanks so much for taking some time out this evening to join us and talk a little Woodstock Wolverine football. We don't know too much about you. I know that this is what I do know. I've been around Georgia for about 17 years. I followed high school football for probably that entire time. Sure. In your only previous head coach experience or tenure, you took a North Springs charter school team who did not have a lot of success to the postseason. So that if anything else says something about you, you can flip some things around. So, Coach, just tell us a little bit about yourself, your philosophy, and how the transition has been coming into Woodstock.
Sure, yeah. I appreciate that. I'm honored to be here this evening. Thanks for having me first and foremost, and great to talk Woodstock football. Yeah, the last 3 years I've been at West Forsyth high school out in Cumming in Georgia. As defensive coordinator there for Coach Davila, who I worked for previously at Etowah. So I've been in Cherokee County once before. Loved it out here. Family loved it out here, especially the Town Lake area. Before that, did some time in Etowah. I was at Alpharetta High School off and on for 8 years in Fulton. And then I spent some time from 2003 to 2011 in North and South Carolina. I was a head coach up there twice. One to the private school, one to the public. So had some experience coming down here to the great state of Georgia. And in 2012, I came down here, became defensive coordinator at Alpharetta High School, had some really good years and good defenses there. And, and then to your point, in 2016, we went to North Springs and didn't have a ton of success. Actually, 1-29, I believe, in the 3 years before we took them over. Really proud to say, we went 6-5 in that first year and took a team that really didn't know how to win, and we did it, and we turned them around, and was really proud of that, really proud of the staff and the kids, and we're going to do the same thing here at Woodstock, just trying to kind of change the culture a little bit, and like I said, been in Town Lake before, and it's just an amazing community, an amazing area. We have some great kids here. It's been a heck of a summer. We worked real hard, had some padded camps we took them to, and 7-on-7 tourneys that were really competitive, and got after it in the weight room, still are, and really just trying to change it and get on the right path.
Well, Coach, I hope Woodstock fans can forgive you for all your years at Etowah. I think they'll be able to. You win a couple of games.
Yeah, I'm being PC tonight, so I'm saying Etowah. I'm supposed to say the school down the street, right? So.
That's right. Until they get the red tape out and start marking out the E's on the side.
Right.
Well, Coach, obviously you've been around Cherokee County, but being the quote-unquote new guy in the room, what is your assessment of Cherokee County football as a whole, and what are you most excited about to see now that you're in this area and back as a head coach?
Oh, yeah. Anytime you talk Cherokee County football, is you're thinking of toughness, you're thinking of physical football. We're in a tough region with two other teams from different counties that are really, really, really good. But Cherokee County is just, you're thinking tough football, you're thinking tough kids, you're thinking really, really good coaches that have good programs. So, it's really nice. You don't get a night off, really. Once you get region play, all teams are really well coached. The kids play hard, and they're smart. So it's, schematically, you're always in. It's a tough week of prep, leading up to whoever you're playing, and it's really competitive, which is great. I think that's the one thing that's kind of sold me on coming back is every night, the community comes out, whether it's your rival down the street or whether it's going to another Cherokee County high school. They just come out, they support, and there's really good crowds, and kids get excited, and your high schools get excited, and that's the thing that I miss, and it's kind of like a tight-knit community, all one big community here in Cherokee County, and that's kind of what I love and miss, so the opportunity came about, and I kind of jumped at it. I think this community is awesome, and we look forward to kind of competing, this year coming up, and kind of getting after it with all the other coaches in the community.
Well, you won some points in my book for that answer. That was a good answer. You said you were being PC. That's a very good crowd-pleasing answer.
There you go. Right.
I do want to talk a little ball with you here. Obviously, Woodstock's had quite a losing streak, 22 games as it currently stands.
Right.
What does it take, and you have a history of rebuilding programs, but what does it take to change that culture and to get back on the right track, and what's your plan to do that at Woodstock?
Yeah, I think it's just frame of mind, coming in day one, teaching them what we want. And there's certain things that we want to be known for, versus being physical. And whether it's win, lose, or draw on a Friday, it's knowing like, hey, we just played Woodstock, the toughest game of the year. They're always going to be physical. It's going to be kind of nasty in a good way, and I think that's first and foremost, is trying to get that in your culture, getting that in your kids. And that starts in the weight room. That starts with dressing the right way and being on time and doing the little things and the little details, which we're trying to hit every day. And it's definitely improving. It's definitely getting there. So just that's the first thing. Really being physical up front is the key, and just being smart and doing the right thing, on the field on Fridays. And whether it's situational football, not shooting yourself in the foot with turnovers, and just being smart on defense, keeping the ball in front of you, And we do attack a lot, which I like. So it's really just attacking each day with that mentality, and I think it's learning how to practice is another thing. Like we put pads on for the first time this week, and they was not so good. Tuesday was good, and you kind of go up and down. So it's just learning how to really, practice the way you want to play, up tempo and up physical, and that's coming along, which I'm pleased to see.
Coach, you talk about the toughness of your region in here in some of the ball in Cherokee County, and I think a lot of that comes with up front on the lines of scrimmage. You return. We're trying to look at your roster, seeing who's returning, and one guy that stood out to us last season up front was Cameron Levette. Tell us a little bit about Cam, and not just that, but your offensive line and then your defensive line. So who are some of those guys that are coming along and becoming leaders on that offensive defensive front?
Yeah, Cam's a great kid to highlight. He's going to be a team captain, and Cam's about 6'3", about 305, and we talk about the physical nature, what we just mentioned, and he's been to a lot of camps this summer, getting a lot of looks, and for that, he's just a road grader type kid. He'll probably play guard at the next level. He plays tackle for us, which is an important piece. He's the blindside, protector to our quarterback, so we think the world of that. So, and he's just a really, really, really good kid. He works hard. He's one of the kids we just mentioned, always on time, staying extra in the weight room, staying extra on the field to get it right. Really a good team leader. Kids flock to him. And just really, really a good character and a program kid, really what you want in your program. If I can have 90 of them, it would be great, Cam. But so he'll anchor our offensive line for sure. Tate Washington's another one. He's going to be a senior returner. He's going to go both ways for us. He'll be our starting nose and play a little bit of guard. His brother Nate will play right tackle, so they'll kind of help anchor our offensive and defensive line. We do bring back our leading tackler, who was a sophomore last year. His name is Andrew Burmeister. He had 108 tackles, I think 16 for loss, a couple of sacks. So, he's going to be our quarterback on defense, which is our Sam linebacker. We expect really, really big things from Drew. He's had a really great camp. He's grown. He's about 6'2", about 2 1/4 now. So he's going to be our thumper in the middle. He's just a smart kid. He's an AP kid in the classroom, and really is going to be our defensive leader. We do have a sophomore corner coming up who's 6'3.5", about 205, and I think he's got really, really good potential. His name's Tyler Barbera, and he'll be a lockdown kid for us. We hope, as our backside corner. So, the good thing is, we're going through, and Cam's a senior, Drew's a rising junior, Tate's a couple of seniors, Tyler's a sophomore. Not only do we have a really solid senior class of 16 or 17 kids, our future's bright, which is really good. And that's, again, one of the things that really I love coming here and I saw was, just training those young kids up and doing it right. I think the future's bright here at Woodstock too, for sure.
Again, on the phone with Coach Dan Devine, the head coach of the Woodstock Wolverines. Coach, one of the things that we noticed throughout the 6 county teams is 5 of those 6 teams are returning a starting quarterback, and you guys are not. And I don't know how big of a deal that is, especially with a first-year head coach, so the slate's clean. What does that quarterback room look for you all this season?
Yeah, so we'll have Peyton Lynch will be our starting quarterback. He's a rising senior. Played a little bit as a junior last year. Hurt a little bit. Also towards the tail end. So he's had a really, really, really good spring and summer for us. He's a really accurate thrower. Perfect for our scheme. Coach Justin Pierce coming over to us from Cherokee. He was offensive coordinator there for a while, and he does a great job for the RPO scheme. And Peyton's had a good, really a good spring and summer. He's taken to the leadership role. He's learned the system. And he's still learning. It's going to take a little bit, and live reps always help that for sure. But yeah, Peyton's going to be a little bit of a new starter, and that's okay. The beauty about coming in and being a new head coach is you tell all the kids it's a clean slate. It is what it is. The past is the past. So really, it's the evaluation process started for everybody at scratch. So Peyton came in, did a great job. He's been real accurate. He's stayed after. He's worked with the young receivers, and we'll have a freshman, Graham Burmeister, Drew's younger brother, probably be our backup as a freshman coming in. He's a lefty. He's going to be a crafty lefty, we call him, but he's going to be our future, and we're excited about him too. So he'll be our JV quarterback also as a freshman, and we're excited. I was just telling Coach today, both of them throwing the ball at practice looked really good the last couple of days in pads, and we're excited about that room and see what they could do this year.
Excellent, Coach. I've got one more question, or maybe it's not even a question, just an opportunity. I guess my question would be, what does success look like for you in year one? And then on the tail end of that, if you had a message for the Wolverine faithful, I'm sure you've been talking to the Touchdown Club in that and being on campus. But for anyone listening in the county, what kind of message would you give to the Woodstock faithful and the area down in Town Lake to come out and support these young men this season?
Yeah, just come back. Come back and support. I know it hasn't been right, the last few years, but that's why we're here and we're going to get it right. And that's the biggest thing is we got alumni coming out and supporting. They've already shown up all summer. They've worked out for us. We reached out to Coach OB. To go back a number of years, Coach OB. Coach Buddy's now in the county again coaching, and we're going to honor all those successful years in the past because I feel that's really important. And just come out and support. That's all I ask. These kids are going to give everything they got, and we will be better. I told that to my principal when he hired me, and it's gonna look different. It's gonna feel different, in a good way. And I think that's the exciting piece to it. And the good thing is people in the community are coming out and seeing practice and coming up to me and when we're eating dinner or anything like that, and they see it. And that feels good. Feels good to hear, but that also has to translate, right? So to your first question, what that looks like is we're just trying to compete, and we want to win, right? We're competing to win. The PC answer is, hey, we want to be competitive. Let's keep it close. And this, guys, we're here to win, right? If we don't win, then they haven't won for a while. So, my job, that's why I'm here. That's why we're here, So we're hoping it translates to a few more than that, but. Got to learn to finish and got to learn to win. I want nothing more than to get this community, get this team and this area, wins and make it exciting again to come out. I remember when, again, down the street when we were the rival and, they were playing in front of 7, 8, 10,000 people, on a rivalry Friday, and it's just awesome. It's a great experience. So I'm really, really excited. I'm really excited. Our family and I are excited to be here and be back in Town Lake for sure.
Well, Coach, we want to thank you again for joining us this evening, and thanks for telling us a little bit about you, especially about your program. And I'd echo that sentiment. I think it's easy to be a front runner and for people to get behind a front runner, but these aren't professional athletes that you're going to see Friday night. These are high school students, and they really do appreciate and enjoy the support. And so, if I can echo that sentiment, especially for those folks down in Woodstock, come out and watch these young men compete week in and week out. And Coach, we're excited to be out there, and we look forward to come out and taking in a game or two over at the Wolverine Den and or the Woodshed, as some might like to call it, and seeing what this young team is all about. And it looks like the future is bright. And I have to tell you, I did run into Mr. Ingham earlier this summer, and he said he was excited about you being on board. So no pressure, but.
No, not at all.
Again, Coach, we do thank you for taking some time to speak with us this evening, and we wish you best luck this season. And we look forward to speaking to you again throughout the season on the podcast.
Thank you, man. And we appreciate what you do for Cherokee County football and Woodstock football anytime. I could be of service anytime. We appreciate what you do for us.
Thank you so much, Coach.
You have a good evening. Thank you.
You too. Thanks, Coach. All right, Coach Dan Devine, head coach of the Woodstock Wolverines. I'd play for him.
Yeah, I'm fired up.
Yeah,
I mean,
that was a great interview.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that he said that is key is the acceptance of where they are. Mm-hmm. It's no secret where they are. Everybody's aware of what's happened, and I like the fact that it's the little things. Getting there on time, all the things he was talking about, that little stuff makes the world of difference, I think. And it's got to be a complete change of culture.
Absolutely.
So I like his approach to that. Before the X's and O's, you have to look at that stuff. And then, for me, I've been looking for Peyton Lynch to get an opportunity at quarterback. I know we've talked about him for a couple years. Good-looking frame, as far as the actual running of the offense. We obviously aren't in the coach's room, so we don't know what's going on there. But impressive frame. Looks like he has a real quick release, like his arm. So I'm excited to see him get to fully take the reins and see what he can do with it.
Yep.
And I'll be interested to see how he can adapt and move forward.
Yeah, Lynch saw some limited action, I think, 10 of 19 last year for 89 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. So, I had a chance to see him in a JV game as well. And like you said, he's a good-looking kid. We know he's been working out. We see we kind of see some of his activity on social media. And now he's got an opportunity as a senior to help lead this turnaround. Right. I mean, I think for us to say Woodstock's going to go, 10-0, I think that's probably a stretch, especially with Rome on the schedule. But even 9-1, but that turnaround, and he's a young man that can lead that. Will, you want to pull up their schedule real quick while I got a minute?
Yeah, and I think one thing to note with this schedule as we take a look at it, first of all, the out-of-region schedule is pretty favorable. Osborne, Hiram, I know Hiram had a good year last year, but historically not that way. The Cherokee game is, once again, it's kind of funny. There's like a triangle of what's the right word? Rivalries. Where Cherokee wants to beat Woodstock wants to beat Etowah wants to beat Cherokee. It's like they all kind of look the opposite way from their rival. It's kind of a fun thing that I've learned. But then Lassiter would round that out. They could win all four of those games. They could lose all four of those games.
Yeah, I think Osborne probably caught a lot of teams by surprise last season. Again, Hiram as a playoff team. Cherokee a playoff team, and then a Lassiter team again, like we mentioned before, who's going to be replacing the quarterback. Coach Tom will have his work cut out there before they jump into region play, and I think first and foremost get one of those non-region wins, and then that. And Coach Devine mentioned it. We got to learn how to win because we it's been 22 games. So if they can learn how to win, I think one of those non-region and hey, on August 18th against Osborne would be a great time to start.
Well, I think everybody's aware of feedback loops, positive and negative, where the more things go wrong, the more they go wrong, and the way things go right, the more they go right. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the same thing with losing in sports. Is once you get on a losing streak, it's real hard to get out of that. And I think if Woodstock can claw their way into a win, then you're going to see them start to perform a lot better. The attitude changes.
Absolutely.
And the conversation goes from, I got to teach y'all how to win, to I got to teach y'all how to keep winning. Mm-hmm. And that is a much easier transition than just learning how to win to start. So I'm excited. You talk about the region schedule. That date for River Ridge is correct. It's a Thursday. So I'm not entirely sure why they did that. But if you want to do a Thursday game, there's a Thursday game.
Here we go, Thursday night football.
I guess it's before fall break, so maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. And then they come out and they face Rome, Allatoona, Etowah, Creekview, and Sequoia, and the bye week for them is built in between Creekview and Sequoia. So that's good. You're going to play two physical teams. That's a good time to have a bye week. And after you run through that first 4-game schedule, you're going to need it.
Yeah, you are. And I tell you what, they better button up those chin straps because it's going to be a tough ride in region play, Will.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking forward to seeing what Coach Devine and his new staff can put together over there at Woodstock. I know it's going to be a ton of fun, and we're looking forward to seeing the growth and knowing some names. Obviously, he gave us a good list there on the offensive line that we can work with. And then obviously, we know Peyton Lynch a little bit from his experience in the past. Be interesting to see some names that we don't know because that always happens each season. I'm looking forward to seeing the defensive organization and seeing what they can do because, that's been the knock on them, especially over the last couple of years, has been the defensive side. So he's known more as a defensive coach.
Right.
And he's going to need that because
and again, he's got Drew Burmeister coming back.
That helps.
One of a tackling machine, if we like to call it, with over 100 total tackles last season. So got some good pieces to build around on that side of the football.
Absolutely. So looking forward to seeing what the Wolverines can put together.
Well, Will, I don't know if we did this on purpose, but we're going to stay down in Woodstock. And there's one more school in Woodstock. I'm probably going to ruffle little feathers when I say they're the little brother of the county, the youngest school. I'm not in the meaning way. They're just the youngest school.
You could have said the younger brother, not the little brother.
Okay, well,
I guess they're both.
In any event, look, this team has. Talk about a team that's turned it around. Coach Mike Collins has changed the culture, and we're going to see if we can get him on the line right now and talk a little River Ridge night football.
Yeah, we talked about last year. Obviously, River Ridge made the playoffs. Fantastic push for them, and it's going to be interesting to see what they can put together coming into this year. And Coach Collins been a big part of that for sure.
Absolutely. Hey, Coach Collins, it is Art Mosley and Will Cooper with the North Georgia Sports Report. You are live on our preseason football podcast. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Oh, man, thanks for having me, man. Super excited. Can't believe football is here already.
Well, Coach, it's like Christmas in August, I guess.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. That's a great way to put it.
As we get started, Coach, first of all, again, thanks for joining us. You've always been in whatever podcast format we've come to you. You've always been a pleasure to speak with. I wanted to. We just wrapped up talking about Woodstock, and they have a coaching change over there. You came on board a few years back, and we talked about it last season. You guys made the postseason, the second time in 3 years. And we talk about culture and what winning and making some of those runs does. How has the culture of your program changed in your tenure down at River Ridge?
Well, I think probably the biggest thing is the expectations of the results we expect to get, I think, on a daily basis. And that is not just pertaining to wins and losses. That's just pertaining to what we expect to get out of practice, what we expect to get out of every rep, what we expect to get out of a weight room session, what we expect to get out of just walking the hallways or being in the classroom, just across the board. I think that's probably the biggest change. I think the expectations have gotten a lot higher. The results that we expect day in and day out for one another, from coaches to players, from honestly starting even with our junior program all the way up through our high school program. I think that just the standard or the expectations of the results we expect to get in our actions on a daily basis is probably the biggest thing.
Coach, you talk a little bit about the offense. You guys are bringing back some big names, and Camden Cox and obviously Coughlin and Spector. Those two guys are coming back as well. You're going to be replacing a couple of big names. Jackson Head comes to mind as a guy that's going to be really tough to replace. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the new players that we may see on offense and some expectations?
Yeah, we got a lot of our receiving core back. Jackson Head's a big loss for us. You can't replace that guy. We're probably going to have to use 3 or 4 guys to just replace what he did. And we're also having to replace MJ Ayers, which was a big threat for us too on the outside. But the rest of the guys are back. I think Thomas Thompson, Grant Hoyer, Nick Bryant, David Kearse are some names that's our core receiving core, along with a lot of other guys that are also going to get some plays. I think those are names that you're going to get to know, and I think you're going to get to know those names pretty quickly as the season starts. Particularly Grant and Nick, they got some playing time last year and made some big plays for us all the time. So we're seeing some big play capability out of them in camp right now. I'm super excited about what they're going to bring to the table this year.
And then on the other side of the ball, Coach, defensively, you guys will have a few names new as well. The linebacking core looks to be pretty similar, but the defensive line looks like it's going to be a new group, replacing guys like Ethan Anderson's obviously a tall order. Can you go over some of the names on defense that you're looking to fill those holes?
Yes, sir. We have sophomore Mason McClendon, who caught our eye early as an 8th grader coming in the 9th grade, and we put him on the fast track, and he's been staying on course as far as walking into that potential. So I think he's going to be a big play guy. Michael Fowler, the senior that was a senior linebacker that we've actually moved to the defensive line. We look for some big plays out of those 2 guys. They've been in our backfield all camp long, so I think they're going to be able to step in, kind of close that gap. But I'll be honest, you're right. You hit the nail on the head. That is a concern of ours. It was going into the offseason. But, it was a concern last year as well because we were losing Brian Bradley and Hunter Coleman and all those guys 2 years ago. So, Ethan Anderson and those guys were fresh out of the block too. So, hopefully we've done a good job. You spoke culture earlier. Hopefully we've done a good job of establishing that, what the expectations are on the defensive line, 9th grade all the way up, and hopefully we can replace it and continue to do the things we've been doing on defense.
Coach, you talked about the line of scrimmage, and you gave us some names on the defensive line. When we turn to the other side of the ball and look at that offensive line of scrimmage, I think a name that we're all familiar with and feel like we've been calling his name since he, for 8 years now. But Jonathan Feletra, and if I had a chance, I would say bump into him in one of his training sessions. But you don't bump into him; you bounce off of him. He is a big, strong kid. We know a lot about Big John, but tell us who's joining him along the offensive line of scrimmage this year. As you guys, I feel like I've had some turnover to graduation over the last few years up there.
Yeah, we have, and you're right. You probably did bump into him. If you're anywhere in this proximity, you probably bumped into him because that is a wide body. Let me say, it's a wide body kid, man. And we're glad to have him. We're glad to have him back and anchoring the offensive line. But Daniel Green, who started for us last year, so he's going to come back as a 2-year starter. And we have another sophomore, Tomas Perez, who actually got a lot of playing time last year as a freshman because we had some guys go down early in the season. And Tomas stepped in and did a great job. And then we have Elazar Altamirano, who will play the right side, right guard for us, and who's also had a lot of playing time. And then we've got a couple of guys that are battling out for that 5th spot. Taylor Crockett being one of them, who's probably going to get the nod. But we have Luke Morrison, who's another guy that's in there battling for that spot. And a couple of other guys. But to be honest with you, right now at camp, I'll tell you, I think that's probably the strongest part of our team, the offensive line. They've really gelled. They worked hard in the offseason. And I think John's got probably a lot to do with that. It probably helps when you've got, a D1 offered guy beside you that's pushing you every day. And Daniel Green as well as a returning starter. So, we are replacing a lot up there. But, man, I tell you, I like what I see out of those guys so far.
Coach, what does success look like for the Knights this season? As again, 2 out of the last 3 years, you guys have been in the postseason. What does that look like? Maybe not in terms of wins and losses, or maybe in terms of wins and losses, but as you look at the beginning of the 2023 season, if you can kind of have a crystal ball and say, hey, this would be a successful season. And I understand, hosting that trophy in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium would probably be, at top of the list. But
Yes,
that being aside, as the ultimate, what does success look like for you guys?
Man, what a great question. I think for us is when we look back at it, and this banquet time for us, and the dust has settled for the 2023 season, the question we want to answer is, did we do things the right way, day in and day out? Did we do them properly? One of our mottos is don't blink. There's no blinking in our camp, which means basically when things got bad for us, did we play the next play? And that's not necessarily pertaining to football. That's just life. When it got really tough, did we tighten up our bootstraps, and did we try to push on, carry on, and do the right things for our community, for our brothers that are out here practicing and playing with us every day? And did we maximize the opportunities that we had in front of us, whether they were opportunities in the classroom, opportunities out in the community, or where there are opportunities on the football field. If we can check those boxes, we'll have our heads up and our chest out, and we'll feel like we've had a successful 2023.
Again, wrapping up with Coach Mike Collins, the head coach of the River Ridge Knights. Coach, just one last statement maybe from you, if I can. Is there any message you want to give to the Knights faithful as we get ready to start the season here in a couple of weeks?
Well, I'm always happy to brag about Knight Nation and the things that go on at the Ridge in the fall. I think we have probably the best fans in the state, if not the Southeast. And so we're super excited to join you guys on Friday night and have you guys come out and cheer on your Knights. We're working extremely hard to put the best product on the field that we possibly can to make you proud and win those water cooler arguments that you're going to have throughout the week. So just come out and be loud for the Knights, and I promise you that we'll do everything we can to get you something to cheer for.
Well, Coach, we thank you for your time this evening. We are looking forward to get over to see Knight Nation and the Rowdy Ridge, as that student section calls themselves, and they can get rowdy and create a great home field advantage over there down off of Arnold Mill Road. And Coach, when we come out, I mean, if you can plug us for maybe a Miss Feletra meatball sub or something,
please.
We're not gonna turn that down either.
Hey, I'll tell you what, she's one of the pillars of our community. She loves taking care of people, especially you guys that come out and do a wonderful job helping us promote our guys and our program. Come see us on Friday, and I'll make sure she takes care of it.
You got it, Coach. You got it, Coach. Hey, thanks so much again for your time. We wish you the best of luck in the rest of that preseason camp, and we look forward to getting out and taking in your program this season.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and go Knights.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you so
Coach.
much, Coach. Again, that was Coach Michael Collins, the head coach of the River Ridge Knights. Overall record of 20-12 in his tenure down there at River Ridge, and he's kind of turned that program. Again, it's the youngest program in the county,
Right.
and I think this just comes with the age of that school. You don't have a ton of tradition just yet. I don't care how, if they had won, maybe if they had won, 8-9 games a year, but they just haven't established a tradition yet. But I think he's really turned some things around down there.
Well, I think there is a tradition now. I think that when he's been doing this for 3 years, going into his fourth year, that's a full segment there. I think he's established that now. I do want to point out something he said. He said he felt like his offensive line was the strongest position group.
Mm-hmm.
That's a heck of a statement.
Yeah, it is.
That's if you're a fan, I mean that's got to be the most resounding thing you can hear, because offensive line drives everything that happens on that side of the ball. So for me, I got to be honest, that makes me think a little bit, because I did not expect him to say that. Obviously, we knew they were going to have some pieces, Daniel Green, Fletcher, as we mentioned. But if he feels like that's the best position group they have, when you talk about how good their wide receivers are, when you talk about how good the running back room is, when you talk about Coughlin and Spector, who call it the quarterback room. I know that there's some changes there, but the quarterback room, that says a lot. So I think that maybe River Ridge might be able to put up some very good points this year and might be able to maybe solidify my point at the top of the show that Camden Cox could be a underdog pick for your 1K rusher in Cherokee County if that offensive line group is the best position group. Yeah,
absolutely. That they also give a chance for rising junior quarterback Ethan Spector to improve on those numbers last year. 145 completions, 242 attempts, over 1,600 yards, 11 touchdowns. Probably going to have to button up the decision making. He also had 11 picks last season. But again, you're talking about a first-year starting sophomore quarterback. I think those are some pretty good numbers that he put up in Coach Levi Brown's offense. And again, if he's got some more time to throw the ball, and if that's and you think maybe Camden Cox and Coughlin and whoever they're putting back there in the backfield, give him, don't make them one-dimensional.
Right.
This could be a very tough team, and maybe we're talking about playoff team throughout the last 4 years at the end of the season.
Yeah, I could think it's a possibility. Obviously, they have some pieces that are still there, as we mentioned to Coach Collins, and the culture, as you mentioned. That's so important when it gets to this point. And playoffs is such an important thing, especially the culture of winning playoff games. There's a lot of teams that make the playoffs regularly and their first-round exits. But River Ridge does not have that history. I think, even last year, you look at it, first-round exit to Langston Hughes.
The eventual state champ.
I mean, it's like, okay, you got knocked out in the first round, whatever. But when they did make the playoffs and went on that run in 2020, it wasn't just a one-win game. It wasn't two. I mean, they advanced a long, long way. So I like their culture. I think if they can get into that playoff spot, I like them, even if they're not a top 2 seed, even if they're a 3 seed or a 4 seed, depending on the matchup. I like them to be that underdog. I like them to be able to pull that off. So I don't know what to expect from River Ridge. Like I said at the top of at the show, River Ridge is that wild card team for me. They're right there with Creekview, where you look at them and you say, they've been good recently. They have this new history of being good. Are they going to be as good as we think they can be? I'm not entirely sure. But I must say, when you say your offensive line group's your most, the best position group that you feel like you have, I like that answer a lot.
That's a great answer. I think one of the things that we talked about is that area of concern along the defensive line, and Coach Collins was able to give us a little insight into that. Man, it just seems like it's going to be tough to replace a couple of those guys that, that you do get back Brandon Burdett, the Tasmanian Devil, I think, as he was once
that was his nickname.
He was once coined, but losing a guy like Ethan Anderson and then a tackling machine like Brendan Dye, I think those guys are probably a little bit tougher to replace, and maybe like we mentioned, before we came on air, sometimes it's the guy that wasn't the guy because he didn't have an opportunity because there was somebody in front of him, but now he's got an opportunity, and we're going to see, some young men step up on Friday nights, and hey, look, Coach Collins has done nothing but have success in this River Ridge program, so I don't have any reason to doubt that what he's telling me is not the case here. Will, why don't we go ahead and take a look at their schedule of who they have this season? We talk about Hillgrove and Pope. We'll have a new head coach, Coach O'Sullivan, going over to Pope. Sprayberry, a playoff team last season, and North Atlanta, a playoff team last season. Two teams out of Region 7, if I'm not mistaken,
Something
in
like
Class 6A before you jump into the region schedule.
Yeah, again, there's that Thursday game against Woodstock. Yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing. The thing about their out-of-region schedule is those teams could be really great, but they also could be pretty average. North Atlanta last year was a pretty good team. But, like Hillgrove, they've done both. They've been really good, and they've not been so great. Pope, kind of the same thing, And this is where I make the point that the recency bias comes out. Because if you remember, at the end of Game 3 last year, we were all selling River Ridge as the Elite 8 team because they put up all these points, and then you looked at those three teams and you said, oh, well, they give up an average of 50 points a game. I mean, this is just not – that Pope game comes to mind. I think they won it 44-0 or something. So just keep that in mind. But then when you jump into the region schedule, Woodstock, then the fall break before you get ready to go face Sequoia and Creekview, and then they have a bye week. And that, again, is a very favorable bye week after facing Sequoia and Creekview. I like that because it gets you ready to go to Rome. And, again, that's a very physical group of teams there, so you're going to need a week in there to just recover, and then at Etowah and then versus Allatoona to wrap things up. Hopefully that Allatoona game goes a little bit better than it did last year for all parties included.
Absolutely.
For us on the back end, that was a nightmare game. But we were there. We handled it. But, yeah, I think River Ridge could be very impressive. I don't know what to expect. I really don't. And I think that the potential for them is extremely high. I also think that their floor could be potentially pretty low. It just depends on how far advanced these other teams in the region are and how prepared they are to play those games moving forward.
Yeah, I think I'm really looking forward to that game on September 1st to get at Sprayberry, and Coach Vavra has those guys ready. Sprayberry returns their starter quarterback, Kamari Nix, and so he was a all-region performer over there in Region 7. Again, be interesting to see how they handle that game against a talented quarterback like that. I think that might be the first true test for that defense, and we can get an idea of how they're going to pan out. And in North Atlanta, they had a talented quarterback last year in Lorenzo Lennon, who's moved on to graduation. So maybe that's a game, and that's a game that I think River Ridge would like to have back. Kind of a funky game getting down there, and the time, the APS, they share stadiums,
right.
So it's just kind of a funky setup in that game, but they'll get to host North Atlanta this season. So week 3 and 4 will be very important, pivotal. And again, we won't jump on the bandwagon after the results of those two games because that's not even region play.
Right.
But I am interested in seeing how they fare against those two teams as they get geared up for region play and for their second, hopefully for them, for their second consecutive playoff berth.
Yeah, I'm excited to see River Ridge. I really, really, really feel like this is going to be a fun year for them. I just don't know what direction some of those games break. But like I said, saying you have offensive line as your favorite position group, I'm willing to put a little faith into that statement.
Well, you mentioned offensive line. Next, we've taken care of the Woodstock schools in Cherokee, at least by address.
Right.
I don't know.
Start moving north here.
We're going to start moving north, and we're going to go northeast. Yeah, northeast. And, it's interesting. I had someone come out that way, and they said, this is just not even Canton. And I say, well, it's not. We have Canton addresses up there in the 30115. But we're going to go over to Owen Store Road, where they are Owen Store made. And our next interview will be with the head coach of the Creekview Grizzlies, Coach Trevor Williams. And you mentioned offensive line. He's got a pretty good one, returning 3 starters, including a high major, I would say prospect, but D1 signee, and Andrew Rosinski. We'll talk a little bit about him, I'm sure, with Coach Williams, along with those other guys, Sears, Mears, and Bowling, and Zarita, and a couple of those other guys. Maybe one of the most impressive offensive lines in the county, Coop.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about Creekview that has that pedigree of offensive line play. You talk about John Williams, Nick Penley, those guys that are just used to coming out there and performing at that high level. I wouldn't be surprised if they maintain that. Obviously, Rosinski seems to be the next man in line of those great players. And then, I think the question mark is around that. I think Austin Guest has proven to be a pretty good quarterback, but the running back room is going to be a big question. Wide receiving core going to be a little different. It'd be interesting to hear who they think they have on the offensive side. And it sounds like Coach Williams is doing the play calling now on the offensive side of the ball too. So getting his take on what he feels about the offense will be a big thing, and the defense.
Hello.
Hey, Coach Williams, this is Art Mosley and Will Cooper of the North Georgia Sports Report. We've got you live on our preseason podcast. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Man, thanks for having me, guys. It's good to finally talk to you guys again. That means the season's right around the corner.
Well, Coach, we appreciate it. And Coop, I have to tell you, when I sent the messages out to the coaches, Coach Williams was the first to respond, and that was his response: "Must be football season, boys." And so, Coach, thank you so much, as always, for joining us. We're going to jump right into our questions. We got a handful. We're not going to keep you too long here. But there's something I want to talk about. First off the bat, you all are returning a starting quarterback. You started last year, sophomore Austin Guest. You're returning him. You have what looks to be an experienced offensive line. And from our estimations last season, the injury bug beat you a little bit at receiver. But what is your expectation coming out of this offseason for this offense?
Yeah, anytime you return your quarterback, you feel like you're ahead of the game. But with the amount of experience we've got, a lot of football games under the lights, under our belts, the expectation is just to get better every week, to take steps towards being the best version of themselves that they can possibly be. I mean, you look at left tackle Andrew Rosinski, you look at the center Pearson Sears, both, Andrew's committed to North Carolina, Pearson's starting to gain some traction at the 1AA level. And then you've got Michael Roach, who's a 3-year starter at tight end, Cal Schubert, who's a playmaker, Jackson Stanley, Lee Brock, another name to know, a young guy, Nick McCarro, is another junior tight end that's come on here lately this summer, making some big plays for us. And then Nathan Ajiman is a sophomore, big 6'4" kid. So we feel like we're talented, but it's never enough to be talented, especially in this region. You've got to put it together. You've got to play as a group, and that's kind of where we're at now is gelling and making sure that everybody's on the same page.
Coach, great to talk to you here. We're talking about some of the defensive changes that you guys are going to overcome, and one of those is obviously Isaac Hubert is a big name to fill offensively and defensively, but specifically on the defensive side of the ball. What is it going to take for that linebacking core and that defensive line to kind of fill that hole, and who are some of the guys that you're looking towards to kind of fill that gap?
Yeah, well, fortunately or unfortunately, him being pulled into a role at running back last year kind of, I don't want to say softens the blow when you talk about the school all-time leader in sacks and tackles for loss, but got some guys some time under the lights. Jonah Durham is another name at outside linebacker, Brant Freeman, Jack Gibson, all guys that have played at that spot and some different things. And Josh Tootin returning was our sack leader a year ago with 5 sacks. And so those guys have done a really nice job. But it starts and ends with Reed Anderson in the middle. I mean, you're talking about a 4-year letterman, 3-year starter at Mike, and had some all-state nods last year as a junior. He's the heartbeat of that defense, and as long as he's out there calling the shots and directing traffic, we feel good about that group.
And Coach, you mentioned him being called into the running back room. Talk a little bit about the running backs. Obviously, last year you guys tried out a few different ones there. Nigel Agamane comes to mind. I know you have a few names as well that are younger guys that you may be looking towards. Can you tell us who in that running back room has impressed you in this spring and summer camp?
Man, I tell you, it may be our most improved room on the roster, if I'm being honest. We got 4 guys that we feel really good about. Starts with Mason Munn, who played a little bit last year as a 9th grader. Nigel has come so far, both as an outside linebacker and as a running back. We expect him to see time on both sides of the ball. Grayson Davis is another name. Senior, got hurt early in the Hillgrove game last year. But he's back off an injury and looks really, really good. And then Tristan McWilliams is the 4th one coming up. Had a great JV season for us. Really tough runner. Runs well between the tackles. So we're excited about that group. I don't know that there's a Tyler Stevens in the bunch or an Isaac Hubert that's going to carry it 35 or 30 times on a Friday night. But between them, they've all got their different skill sets and different strengths. And hopefully we can do a good job putting them in a position to be successful. But all 4 of those guys run extremely hard.
Coach, I don't want to steal any thunder or let you know I've been spying on your backfield there, but I got a chance to take in that core in your spring game over at Kennesaw Mountain, and I can echo those sentiments. It looked like maybe, like you said, you don't have a Tyler Stevens, a one guy to go to, but you've got a pretty deep bench over there, and looks like a something that something to build on, especially with the youth and then the senior leadership of Nigel over there. I wanted to change gears a little bit. Secondary, you lose a guy. You lose a couple players, a guy like Cole Sackman, Cox Young in the secondary. We know you're bringing back Lee Brock, who's been an impressive ball player for you for a few years, and as you mentioned, Josh Tootin, your sack leader, and kind of just a heat sinker back there, in my opinion. What else? How else does that secondary look this season, and a position that I feel like has been a strength of Creekview over the last 5-6 years?
Yeah, Lee Brock is going to start for us at safety. Does a phenomenal job. We're bringing back Evan Whalen, who started several games for us last year as a sophomore. Unfortunately, lost him to injury week 9 against Woodstock. But he's back healthy. He's had a phenomenal offseason. He's one of the most natural defensive backs that I've ever been around, from a standpoint of not only does he have the coverage skills, but he can come up, make tackles, and plays the ball in the air really, really well. We've got 2 or 3 guys competing at that safety spot to kind of not replace Cole, but to fill in those shoes. And then, we've got another guy, Andrew Adams, is a senior coming back. He started, I think, 4 games for us at corner. So he'll get some time there. So, it's not the big names that have been multi-year starters like a Cole Sackman or a Taylor Cox Young, but some really solid guys that have been under the lights. And that's huge, because to me, that's one of the toughest spots to play in all of football, because it's you on an island with a guy that is running forward while you're trying to run backwards. So I really appreciate what those guys do, and we're excited about that group.
Coach, again, we're speaking with Coach Trevor Williams, the head coach of the Creekview Grizzlies. Coach, last season, and not just last season, we've talked about with you before, just the home field advantage of playing in the Grizzly Den. Your road games last season were a little bit different story. It was it sometimes looked like a tale of two teams. For you guys coming in this season, what does it take? Maybe not to say to win on the road, because you got some difficult road opponents for certain, but what does it take to take that home field mentality on the road, and is that always possible?
Yeah, I think it starts with can you be more disciplined? It's going to be a hostile environment. There's going to be people there yelling against you and doing those things, and usually any sort of crack in the armor is going to show up on the road. But again, when you've got the guys that have played, I think I counted 10 guys that played as sophomores in the Carrollton playoff game 2 years ago, been 3-year starters. Hopefully, you can go on the road and maintain some composure and be able to take care of business and compete at that level. But, in this region and in this county, I mean, it just seems like the football gets better and better every year with the county schools. And then Altoona obviously is very talented and well coached. And, we all know what Rome brings to the table. So there's not an easy Friday on the schedule. I tell our guys all the time, there's, I think, 8 playoff teams on the schedule, and 4 of them made it past the first round. So home or road, you got to come locked in every Friday night.
You're absolutely right, Coach. It is no small task, and I think the physicalness that your team has played with in the past, your offensive line, your defense, that attacking style of defense, I think people probably have you earmarked as well. They probably you're going to get everybody's best shot week in and week out.
Yeah, certainly. That's one of the great things about this game is it's still, it's changed so much over the last 10, 15, 20 years, but at the heart of it, it's still the same. It's still blocking and tackling. It's still toughness and physicality, and it's still winning a one-on-one matchup. So that's one of the things we love about it, what keeps you coming back year in and year out.
Awesome. Well, Coach, those are all the questions we had for you this evening. we also once again want to thank you for joining us on the Cherokee County Kickoff Podcast. Want to give you the last word to your fans and your faithful. If you have anything for Grizzly Country out there that you'd like them to say before you guys get the season. I know you have a scrimmage over at Cherokee next Friday, and then you guys will kick it off on the 19th hosting the Cambridge Bears, a team that's probably closer to you than any other school in the county, that's for sure.
Yeah, the message is thank you. We have such an incredible community, our administration, our Friday night game day folks, and we've mentioned them on this podcast a bunch of times, and our parents and our booster club. So the message is thank you, and keep doing what you're doing. Keep supporting these players. The work they put in and day out is just phenomenal. Keep coming and showing up and making the Grizzly Den the best place to play on a Friday night in the state of Georgia.
Absolutely, Coach. And again, a special thank you for joining us, and we're looking forward to talking to you throughout the rest of the season.
Yes, sir. Y'all have a good evening.
All right, thank you, Coach.
Bye-bye.
Again, Coach Trevor Williams of the Creekview Grizzlies looking to – he mentioned that Carrollton playoff game. That was they missed out on the playoffs last season. We're in a tie. We talked about this briefly earlier with River Ridge, lost out in the tiebreaker. But a team that has had some success over their tenure. I talked about the little brother. Some people can look at Creekview as a little brother or a younger brother in the county. Is that
throw around
now?
Little? You gotta clarify that.
Okay, younger.
I'm telling you, man. You're gonna get home. X, not Twitter. X is gonna be lit up.
Yeah, they're gonna light up. They can light up Turd Ferguson Report. They can light up North. It's all good.
Yeah.
We say that, but Creekview has almost been in existence for 20 years now. Believe it or not, it's hard to. That's kind of a an eye opener. You don't think of a school that has been in existence almost 20 years as the younger brother. But they've been around enough to establish some identity, and we talked about that. That home field advantage is one of them.
Well, I'll tell you, we went up to Dahlonega, and I promise this story has a point before you just lose me. We went up to Dahlonega, and they've opened one of those shops up there, and we stopped in, and one of the girls in the shop asked us, she said, "Are y'all from here?" Cherokee County, so kind of. And she said, "Oh, I graduated from South Forsyth or something, I don't remember." And Katie said, "Yeah, I graduated from Cherokee." And I said, "Yeah, I graduated from Creekview." And she said, "Oh, I hate Creekview." It's like the instant we're like, Cherokee didn't matter, but Creekview mattered. And I think there's some truth to that, because we talk about Creekview has that historical winning percentage of about 70%. Mm-hmm. And I think when you look at that, I think that rubs a lot of people the wrong way, and they have a history of winning. Now, we talked about some teams don't have a great playoff record, and Creekview, unfortunately, falls into that segment where they get to the playoffs, and it doesn't seem like that a lot of times they're able to jump that first game. And obviously the Carrollton game comes to mind. I think the Carrollton game is much different than what we're talking about here. Carrollton was a very quality opponent, and they had to go to Carrollton, obviously, and they played a very good game. Mm-hmm. They really did play Carrollton very well, especially for the first half. So all of that being said, moving into this year, I mentioned that they were one of the big question marks. I like the fact he said that the running back room he feels like is very strong, because that last year you felt like Isaac Hubert was just pushing that offense forward the entire time. And if you can have a stable of guys that you feel better about, the wide receiver room can be a little bit healthier. You don't lose some of those guys to injury. And again, that's not your fault. That's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles. Everybody deals with injuries. Then, look, Coach Williams has always had a good defense at Creekview. It's just kind of his trademark. You're not worried about the defensive side of the ball necessarily. It's that offensive side of the ball that really need to see some improvement. And I know you asked him about the home and away there. I think that's the major key, is that home and away split for points scored was unbelievable. I know last year we did it on the podcast, we did the math, and I think it was like Creekview was 21 points better on average at home than on the road. And as we take a look at their schedule, this year it would favor them a little bit to be that separate, because you would figure in you could beat River Ridge, you could beat Sequoia. Obviously that Rome game is kind of, up in the air.
Sure.
But you do have some fortuitous breaks in the away schedule, as Etowah, as great as they are, that's a game that's winnable for Creekview most of the time. And then the Woodstock game, obviously we don't know what Woodstock's going to be. They're in that transition period. I think that this year, if they can at least get on the road and win a couple games, that would be huge for them. It's going to be nice that they get to open up at home against Cambridge and then face Hillgrove at home as well before they have to go to Calhoun and then to North Forsyth. Calhoun's going to be a tough place to play. And then North Forsyth, obviously the Raiders they're a pretty tough customer as well. So I'm interested to see that dynamic. on the front side of it, but also on the back side when you get into that region schedule. If you don't win on the road, you got big problems. I mean, that's as simple as it is. So it'll be interesting to see how they can bounce that and see what changes there, and I think it starts offensively.
Well, you take a look at that schedule, Will, and 2 out of the first 3 games, they're going to be facing a region champion in Class 5A, Cambridge Bears, the region champs in their region, kind of almost came out of nowhere, replacing the starting quarterback. And Preston Clemmer had a fantastic season for the Bears over there. And then Calhoun, who returns to starting quarterback, a great running back. And Caden Williams, and then a tight end and Amari Winston, I believe. He also plays defensive end, also plays basketball, and a couple of great wide receivers. And a well-coached team up in Calhoun, a team that upset Cartersville in Region 5 over there, and then ended up winning the tiebreaker to claim the number 1 seed there. So you're going to have your work cut out for you early. So we're going to see how well Creekview has done this offseason and maybe where they stack up amongst teams in 6A. Remember, a couple seasons ago, this is a Creekview team we were talking about as a top 10 team, maybe perennially, and then you lose a couple of pieces and that fall off a little bit. But I think this is a team with the experience they have up front that can find their way back to the postseason.
I agree. I think, and this is kind of, you're going to hear us say this a lot, especially River Ridge, Creekview, because I think they're in the same boat, especially knowing what we know about the offensive lines. I think they're kind of in that same. Do they have the potential to have a great year? Yeah, absolutely. But I also think the floor for them is relatively low. I think that there's an opportunity for some real letdown. It just depends, and it's a lot of the intangible stuff. It sounds like the rosters are pretty well figured out, but I do worry about Creekview offensively, knowing that they have Coach Williams calling the plays. How much has he changed the play calling? Is he coming up with an entirely new scheme? You just don't know how those guys react. But I do like the fact that they have a solid running back room. I like the fact that Austin Guest is coming back, and he's really kind of running back too. When you think about it, just from the amount of yards he has the ability to get out of the pocket and make things happen. A lot like Mahoney is at Etowah. We talk about him. Guest maybe a little less quick, but just as fast, if that makes sense. A little bit first step speed, not as much, but able to throw the ball as well. So I really don't know. I hate to say that because I think it's the first time ever I've said I just don't know. But I don't know what to think. I don't want to set any expectations there. So I'm very excited to see. And again, for Creekview fans, if you get to the end of week 2 and things aren't looking good, don't jump ship.
Just take a deep breath.
Relax.
Take a deep breath.
But yeah, I am very interested to see how that plays out.
Well, he talked about Guest completing over 50% of his passes, over almost 500 yards rushing last season. You go back to that offense real quick before we jump into our next interview here. Last year, they averaged about just over 18 points a game. Defense allowed 17 points a game, so right about where we expect them to be offensively. Maybe that number is a little bit higher. Potentially, they're a team we're talking about in the postseason.
Well, and if I remember right, when you looked at the home and away, I think it was like they averaged 8 points per game away, and then they came home and they averaged 28, and that's how they got to that number. And you talk about the defense was pretty much the same. The defense averaged 17 points per game and played like 17 points per game. But that is going to be the biggest difference to me is how are they able to convert that and make what happens at home happen on the road. And hopefully this new offensive scheme and having some solidified starters at offensive line and the running back room can help navigate that. Because, again, I don't want to brush over the defense because it's such an important part of Creekview's identity. But I just trust Coach Williams and I trust the guys they have coming back to maintain that average of 17 points per game, maybe a few points here or there. But overall, they're not going to get blown out of the water defensively.
I agree with that, and especially if you have that thumper in the middle like Reed Anderson.
Exactly, and that's those guys are who I'm talking about there. When you know that you have those guys, and they just have a history of it. And the thing about Creekview that's interesting is we talked about it last year. With guys like Evan Whalen, they always find a couple of sophomores that you just kind of sit there and look at the roster and you go, really, this guy? And then you watch him in game and he's unbelievable. And it's like, why have we never heard of this guy? Oh, he's a sophomore. That's
Absolutely.
Right. So I don't have any concern about them finding younger guys to fill in that hole. It'll be interesting to see, though, for sure.
It will be. We'll have a chance to see them out of the gate for our broadcast season. Creekview Cambridge will be the first game that we'll have streamed for you, and we're looking forward to see the Battle of the Bears as the Grizzlies host the Cambridge Bears.
Yeah, that'll be a good one because Cambridge gotten the best of them the last 2 years after Creekview owned that series for the first 8 games, I think it was.
Yeah.
I think it's 8-2 now.
Yeah, it was. Well, we talk about Creekview. We talk about rivalries. We're going to ride down East Cherokee Drive and give a phone call to Creekview's, I would say, their biggest rival. And probably, I don't know if Sequoia
views that
views
way.
that because I think they have that rival with Cherokee is pretty intense. But
I don't know. That would be a good question.
But I tell you what,
on that.
I don't know if Coach Teeter will tell us that, but we're going to give him a call and talk about the Chiefs here, the county champions from last season.
That is correct. Don't want to make anybody upset by saying that, but that is a factual statement.
Facts over feelings, Will.
Well, there you go.
Hello.
Hey, Coach Teeter, it's Art Mosley and Will Cooper from the North Georgia Sports Report. We have you on live for our Cherokee County football preview show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, as always, for joining us, Coach. We were just finishing up talking about your team. I don't know if they give you an award for it, but you all are the county champs. You beat everybody in the county that you played, and there was no doubt about it. Coach, building off that success or coming off a successful season like you had last year, and even a playoff game that we had a chance to broadcast it, we thought that you guys had put yourself in a position to win that ball game. A couple of plays didn't go your way, but coming off of last season, what is your outlook and what is the team's outlook to build upon that success from last year?
It's been very positive. Our kids seen that, even though we struggled early, that as long as we stayed in and believed in what we were doing, things could work out, and it did. We got in. Like you were saying, we thought we had a chance right there relatively early in that game to win and move on to the next round. But our kids are excited. They're positive. They've had a great off season. Got a really, really good summer. So our outlook is just to hopefully build on that and even try to go a little further than what we did last year.
Coach, and to help you on that track, you guys do return an awful lot from last year. Obviously, Jackson Hancock gets a large majority of the attention, committing to Missouri earlier this year and things like that. But the quarterback room last year, it seemed like a revolving door, mostly due to injury for you guys. And Colby Martin ended up being the young man to step up as a freshman and lead your team to a playoff spot. What is the quarterback room like this year? Is he still the starter? And if he is, what kind of growth have you seen out of that room?
Right now, it's him and Jackson Nesbitt, who was the starter game 1 year ago and then got hurt, have both been battling out. Colby right now, if we started today, would start the game. He's had a lot of growth. He's had a great summer, both in just learning what we're doing offensively and handling the things that we do. He's really had a great summer in the weight room. That's where he needed his biggest growth, to get a little stronger, have a little more zip on his ball. But he's done really, really well with everything in there. But him and Jackson have competed well throughout the summer, throughout the spring. Like I said, next Friday we'll start with Colby, but they'll both play. And they both do a really good job of working with each other and helping each other. But we just hope Colby can do what he did last year, and he can continue to grow and get better each year. People just don't realize that he was a ninth grader kind of thrown into everything last year, and probably handled it better than a ninth grader is expected to maturity-wise. He did a really good job with everything. So the weight room was just, like I said, was his biggest place where he needed to improve, and he did really well in that.
Well, Coach, as you mentioned last year, having success with him, one of the big pieces to that was obviously the defense, which was arguably one of the best that we've seen covering high school football here in Cherokee County. Can you tell us a little bit about that group and the defensive side of the ball moving into this year and how you're looking to continue that success from last year?
Well, we got 6 returners, so that helps. And being the 2 inside backers helps a lot. They were young last year, and they grew up a lot throughout the season. Coach Buddy did a wonderful job of just keeping them patient, keeping them humble, and keeping them believing into his system. It was his second year, so kids finally understood things a little better. But with the rocky start, he did a good job of keeping them, mentally together and in it. Having Jackson and Britton Darling both in the secondary back helps a lot. Cam Walker's back at corner. So the other areas, the outside backers, the front, and then the other corner are kind of the areas we've had to really kind of move people around and find the best fits that we have. And he's done a really good job of getting that group together. We're hoping that things can start off pretty fast for us defensively where they can hold us in. But just, I think the biggest thing is that everybody understanding his system now that we're going into year 3 has really helped. And then those returners just being able to influence the younger kids will help out a lot in getting them to believe in what we're doing.
Yeah, Coach, you talked about that defense. Just in county games, you guys allowed a paltry 8.6 points per game. So I'm not going to sit here and lobby for Coach Brent Buddy to get him a pay raise here, but they have done something right. Coach, I want to flip to the other side of the ball, moving from defense on to offense, and a guy that made a transition from defense to offense last season for you, and Brady Curl, and looked to be a leader up front. We know that you return Asher Martineau as well, who spent some time on the starting for you. But how was that offensive line rounding out for you? And we know that's a key part of that offensive system that you run over there.
Well, our center's back. Dimitri's back. Carter Leggetti started for us at tackle last year. We've moved him to guard. So him and Asher will be the guards. Brady's back, which having Brady, Asher, Carter, and Dimitri all back helps a lot. And then there's been a battle with Alex Brewer, who's a sophomore, and Carson Cagle, who's a junior at the other tackle. But having those other 4 to be able to mentor Alex and Carson have really helped a lot. Just those guys' growth. We started out going pretty well there at the beginning last year and kind of stumbled in the middle and kind of found our way again at the end of the season. But I think those guys now being 2 and some of them 3-year starters is going to really help in what we do up front. We added Chris Jordan, came over from defense to play tight end for us in our wing tee. And then just, having Jackson back and, again, talking about Colby and even Tyler has really helped kind of keep everything where we were at last year at the end of the season as far as offense.
Coach, we want to talk a little bit about your spring game. We had a chance to take in some of that, and looked like you guys were playing out of the shotgun a little more than under center. Is that something that we can expect to see during the season, or is that just a wrinkle you were used to throw everybody off as they try to game plan for that wing tee? Because nobody could seem to solve that in the county last season.
We'll do both. We played around a little bit just because of some of the personnel we have and trying to fit people in to our wing tee system. So we did experiment a little bit with shotgun and did that pretty much all spring just to kind of work on those things. We'll still do some under center stuff. Still some of the stuff we've done since I've been here. But that was just some stuff we really wanted to work on. We thought maybe help Colby a little bit, even Jackson when they were in the shotgun as far as throwing and things. And then it was pretty easy to marry up everything that we do under center with it. So we can kind of bounce back and forth and people can't kind of just key in on one thing. We know in our system we have to learn to throw the ball a little better than what we do normally. So that's what we were trying to accomplish, trying to get into some shotgun, be able to throw it, but also still not just people see us in it and know that, well, here they're going to start throwing now, so we still can run our counters, our buck, and everything out of it. So it really lended to what we need to do and just gave us another package to have people to have to work on.
Again, we're talking with Coach James Teeter, the head coach of the Sequoia Chiefs. Coach, got a couple more questions for you. Then I'm going to wrap up and let you get on with your evening. You mentioned it. You mentioned his name a couple of times, but Jackson Hancock, again, signing with Missouri earlier this summer. A player like that, Division I caliber player, I'm not saying we don't see him, year in and year out here, but what has he meant to Sequoia, and how have you seen him grow over the course of 4 years? Because I know he played some varsity football as a freshman, and it's hard to believe that his time is coming to an end there at Sequoia. But can you talk a little bit about Jackson Hancock?
Jackson is one of our leaders. He's grown so much as a freshman. He kind of got thrown to the fire as a freshman because that was the COVID year when we would lose some kids for whatever reasons. So he kind of got thrown in early and had to grow up early. And through the last couple of years, he's just kind of built on each year and gotten better. He really came into his own a little bit more offensively last year and really with the special teams. And that's what most people have recruited him, have loved about him, because they feel like they can put him in any of those 3 different areas and him be successful. He's a great young man in the weight room, great young man on the field. He works hard all the time. He's really good in the classroom too. So you couldn't ask for a better person to be a role model for our young kids and to be one of the leaders of our program. And again, like I said, he's just grown a lot, either physically, mentally, and he's just really worked hard on his game in the off season to make himself a better player at that. He's going to be a big player in everything we do this year. He'll play some running back for us. We may stick him out to some wide out, and then he'll continue to return kicks and then start for Brandon safety.
Well, Coach, thanks for letting us know a little bit more about Jackson. And it sounds like he does everything except serve popcorn at the concession stand during halftime. We're wrapping up here with you, but is there a message you have for the Chief Nation this season, the student body, the community about the team that you want to share? Just what to expect, or just to anything you'd like to say to the Chiefs community?
I just ask everybody just to be like last year, be patient. Our beginning of our schedule is the same as it was last year. It's not easy. We open with Lambert, go to Raven Gap, then to have Cedartown come to our place. So we talked to our kids about this the other day, that I can't promise the start of this year won't be different than last year just because of who we play, and we're going to have to be ready. But just have people be patient like they were last year. I think we've got a really good team. I think we can do some things. We're like everybody else in the county. We lose the wrong piece of the puzzle, we could be in trouble a little bit. But as long as we can keep people healthy, I think we've got a chance to continue to do some things and grow on what we did last year and have a successful year.
Well, Coach, I will say it was great. We were out at Skip Pope. We saw you guys play a couple times, and you did a fantastic job. You talk about the beginning of last season. It looked like, oh my gosh, Sequoia's in trouble, and then you get to region play and you guys turn it around, and again the best team in the county, in my opinion. And I'll tell you, I think that game at Cherokee was probably a turnkey moment. The Hancock block field goal going into, I believe it was halftime. But anyway, yep. I say all that to say, Sequoia Nation, be patient, because Coach Teeter is no spring chicken when it comes to coaching, so he knows how to get these. Coach, I'm not going to tell all your business, I promise, but you've been doing this for a couple years. And,
I hope he takes that as a compliment.
Yeah, I do.
And so, Coach, we look forward to getting back out to Skip Pope and seeing your team play this season, and we look forward to speaking with you later on this year. We do want to wish you the best of luck, and thank you so much for joining us here on the North Georgia Sports Report.
Thank you all so much. We look forward to having you.
All right, thanks so much, Coach.
Thank you. Bye.
Once again, Coach James Teeter, head coach of the Sequoia Chiefs. And I say that, it's kind of a joke. I guess I should tell the story. I won't tell how old I am, but maybe me and Coach Teeter are the same age. Maybe that's
there you go.
But Coach Teeter got to start down in head coaching down in Florida, Green Cove Springs, at Clay High School, and I may or may not have been in high school at the same time that Coach was a younger coach back in his early days. So, in any event.
Yeah, well, you Florida guys. No, I'm just kidding. But the thing about Coach Teeter is that you can tell his team doesn't get too high and too low, because he's just the most
even keel.
And that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that it doesn't sound like he's excited for the season. He obviously is, but he just is one of those coaches that sometimes when you're dealing with high school kids, you need to have an adult in the room, and he is like the ultimate adult in the room.
Absolutely.
He's going to handle the business. Nobody's going to get too freaked out, and that's what you need in a coach, and I think he's fantastic at that. And the record shows, they do not get too high and they do not get too low. So I'm looking forward to see what they put together this year. I think Sequoia this is the most excited Sequoia fans should be since 2018.
Yeah, I agree. And that you're talking about returning a quarterback, whoever it is, taking snaps under center.
Right.
You've got a Power 5 type player in Hancock. You mentioned Tyler Bell coming back. I don't. And then again, the maturation, or what we will see out of the maturation in the quarterback room. I think talk about Nesbitt and Martin, which one of those guys will get the nod ultimately. Got a little bit of time before we get to that point in region play to determine who exactly will be taking snaps under center. But you talk about you returning on the other side of the ball. You talked about returning both linebackers. You got Bretton Darling there along with Hancock in the secondary. And again, 8.5 points a game, and I know that's just county games. That Rome game, Sequoia allowed, I think, overall was about 22 points a game. That Rome game is kind of an outlier. Rome being Rome.
Rome is Rome.
Yeah, they do what they do. Again, I think Sequoia probably in the same boat. I think next step for them, same boat as Creekview in terms of offensive output. Can they in games like the Rome game, or maybe an Alatoona or another opponent, you mentioned, I believe it's, I want to say Lanier, but it's not Lanier, Lambert.
What if I told you I have their schedule?
Man, that would be amazing to cross-reference. But you mentioned
a
team like Lambert, who's replacing their quarterback, James Tyre. He's moved on to greener pastures. I'm sure Sequoia's happy about that as they'll play Lambert in the first season. But, again, a very challenging opponent on the road over in Forsyth County. And then Rabun Gap, a team that, I'm going to call Dave Garner out.
I was about to say, you and I and Dave get into it's a relative term, but got into it over, what Rabun Gap is and if you should really use them as a measuring stick or not. And you and I end up on the same side of this argument. Yeah, I mean, I think they're a legitimate measuring stick because of the talent that they bring in. I understand they're not a GHSA team and they do things differently. But I think it's fair. And, look, I mean, you face Lambert and Cedartown on opposite ends of that. Cedartown's just legit, is always legit. So
runner-up in Class 4A.
Yeah.
Lost that game to Benedictine by 1 point. So,
yeah,
they'll be without Harlem Diamond. But, for Cedartown, at least, that's a team that Sequoia should be familiar with their offense.
Yes, yeah. But here's the thing about Cedartown. They're Cedartown.
Just
like we said, Rome is Rome.
Yeah.
Cedartown is Cedartown.
I mean, it's Polk County football. There's tradition there.
It's legit. And that Cherokee game for the last couple years has been just awesome.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun to watch. Obviously you remember the goal line stand where Matthew Traynor
was he in?
Yeah.
I don't know because the referee said he was not in.
Well, that's all that mattered. I mean, here's what I'll say. The only thing I could watch was the video. We were in the booth, so there was no me seeing it with my own two eyes, and there was no goal line shot.
Right.
So who really knows? But yeah, and then you get into the region schedule there: Etowah, River Ridge, Rome, Creekview, Alatoona. They have the bye week after Creekview, which is always nice after facing your rival.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately for them, they do have to go to Creekview, and if I'm right in this, in my history lesson, I don't believe they've ever beaten Creekview at Creekview.
Yes, they have.
They have?
Yeah, 2017, and I think it was 2017.
Okay.
And I won't forget it because there was that game Creekview got thumped. It was like 48-13.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it was. I think Brooks Morris for Sequoia returned a pick six, and I mean it was just
off to the races.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, either way, they don't have a great record there.
They don't.
But I still think that this year's Sequoia team is going to be different. I think that they're going to have the best shot. Obviously, they won that matchup last year. And then look, that Alatoona game last year was like watching 1980 football. I mean, it was ground and pound defense. What was the final score in that? 10-7, 7-3.
Yeah, 10-7. I think the Creekview defense gave up maybe like 101 yards. Sequoia defense gave up 101 yards or something like that. 10-0 actually was a score.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, that's a game that's winnable for them, I think, and they're playing it, at Skip Pope.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. So that's a winnable game, and I think that again, Sequoia. Kind of like we talked about with River Ridge, they're a couple of wins away. Etowah, kind of the same thing, just a couple of wins more. That defense a little better. I think for Sequoia, it's offense. Is that offense just a possession better each game? If they are, then I like them not only in the region, but I really like them in the playoffs.
I couldn't agree more, Coop. I think this is a team that can host a playoff game. If we get a defensive performance out of them this season, any close to what we saw last season, this is a team that can really challenge for hosting a playoff game and maybe making a push further down the road like the 2018 season.
Yeah, and the thing that they have is they have playoff experience now. They went to South Paulding, and South Paulding was not ready to play them for the first quarter and a half. They really surprised them. Ian Mariah was a big part of that. Jackson Hancock was a big part of that. So moving forward, I don't know. I like Sequoia a lot. There's a lot to talk about there. There's a lot to dissect. So, and again, I think if they get into the season and they start out and it's a little slow, I would just tell everybody to calm down, You know, those games really don't matter for playoff standings necessarily. They do if you tie with somebody. But at the end of the day, I kind of like where they are.
I like them too. And I tell you what, we've been bouncing from rival to rival to rival.
It's almost like we planned it this way.
I mean, I don't know.
It's nice when you're in a county because it seems like, they're not always rivals, but you have a pretty good shot of picking one out of the hat.
Yeah, we do. And so we've got one more. We've been zooming through these interviews too. I mean, these coaches.
Yeah,
have been
everybody's
great.
been great getting us on schedule, on time.
And so I hope I didn't jinx us because we've got one more to do.
You did because he's a talker.
Well, that's fine. That's why.
That's why we put him last.
For last, and I talk about all of these schools being younger brother. This is a senior member of Cherokee County, like the charter. I won't say the charter high school because we won't get in the whole history, but we.
Well, that's
we've got.
They do have the county's name.
They do. Yeah, they do. So we've got Coach Josh Shaw in queue. We're going to give him a call and see if we.
Well, before you do that,
okay.
If we're talking about Cherokee, we should mention a big congratulations to the basketball team.
Wow.
I know that's late. I was late. I meant to do that a lot earlier. But obviously you being an assistant coach and the freshman coach there at Cherokee, a huge congratulations to you guys and your team. Me and the family went out actually when you guys played in the state championship game against Wheeler. We went to the mill over here just up the road. And the community was unreal. It was unbelievable. Everybody was cheering. Everybody was booing when they made a call. It was unbelievable atmosphere. Kids were running around, having a good time. So just want you to know that the community was behind y'all, and it's part of why we do this is because that community interaction really kind of sparked something in me that made me believe that this could be something that could work down the road. So congratulations to you guys, and I know you loved every minute of it.
Yeah, man, it was an exciting run. I think if you're going to congratulate anybody, it starts with our 6 seniors, Taden Owens, Braylon Giddens, Daston Hart, Cam Pope, Mason Bennett, and Nate Speaks, and then our super sophomore last season, Lawrence Sanford. That group of young men, and then we had some kids: Hayden Darko, Caden Walsh, Hampton Cox, Peyton Allen, Ben Weizenkorn. Those kids that just came alongside the kids that don't get a whole lot of press up front. But I tell you what, Coach Joe Veman, who's a longtime friend of mine, has done a fantastic job in a couple of years. And I would say, gosh, it's going to sound like a Cherokee commercial here, but it's not just the football team, but or the basketball team, but the baseball team. And Coach Thomas has been able to do some things. And the volleyball rankings have come out recently in Cherokee in Class 7A, being the only member of the county in Class 7A ranked in the top 10 there. So we're excited. I'm excited to be part of that, and I hope people understand that I'm not going to be biased towards Coach Shaw. If anything, he probably thinks I give him a harder time being over there. But Coach, hats off to Coach Veman and our staff, Coach Debus, Coach Sharp, who are long-standing. They stayed on board with us when we came over to Cherokee, and we were grateful to have them. Coach Diawara, Coach Kuba, who came alongside us this year, Coach Murdoch last season, who did have the freshman while I had the JV, and Coach Corey, who joined us. We just had a great group of men, a great group of young men, and great support from our AD, Coach Adams. At the time, our principal, Mr. Larada, who's moved on to the county office. And I think, it's so humbling, like you mentioned, to have the community support. It meant a lot to our young men. It meant a lot to us as coaches and leaders of men. So I probably went on and on longer than I have, and Coach Shaw's probably twiddling his thumbs right now, waiting with bated breath for us to call him. So we're going to switch back.
A simple thank you would have sufficed. I'm just kidding.
We'll see if we can get Coach Shaw plugged in here before we can close it out.
Hello?
Coach Shaw, this is Art Mosley and Will Cooper with the North Georgia Sports Report. We have you on live for our Cherokee County preseason football show. How are you doing this evening?
I am doing well. How are you guys?
We're doing well, Coach. Please forgive us of our tardiness this afternoon as we were wrapping up our previous segment. Before we get started, just want to let everyone know that Coach Shaw is the pride of Adairsville, and also the longstanding coach of the Cherokee Warriors, and I will also say the Cherokee Warriors, who currently host the longest playoff streak in the county, standing at 5 seasons, 5 consecutive seasons making the postseason. So, Coach, with that being said, I want to start off, first question. It seems like you were able to make the postseason under some unusual circumstances, and I want to talk about, you had a lot of inexperience at key positions. The playoff experience that you garnered from last season, what did that do for your team heading into this offseason and over the summer coming into fall workouts?
Well, I think it put a positive spin on the off season as opposed to, maybe a negative spin. By being able to, have an opportunity. We ended up playing Milton in the playoffs. We actually played them very well, lost 28-14 to a team that I believe they ended up going to the semis. So, it gave us a lot of positivity to build on a season that was kind of topsy-turvy last year. So, and gave our youngsters that, we ended up playing about 11 sophomores last year, starting and playing, and a ton of them on offense. And so, it gave them some playoff experience and really gave us a lot of momentum headed into the offseason.
Yeah, Coach, excellent point there. One of the things that we talked about was the running back room. Obviously, you guys had a couple of different names that came in there, mostly due to injury last season. Is there anybody in the spring and summer camp that have now solidified themselves as a running back that you feel like you can hand the ball off to on the first 3 downs?
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, Coach Curtis, Nigel Curtis, our running back coach, who was an All-America guy at Reinhardt, and another Adairsville alum, by the way. Let me point that out. So, does a phenomenal job with our backs. But no, I mean, we've kind of joked with our kids. We got kind of thunder and lightning in the backfield. Malachi Eccles, who played a little bit back there last year. We've moved him to slot receiver, so it's kind of left Christian Irwin, who will be a rising junior, and he's kind of our thunder kid, our inside power counter guy and inside zone. And then we've got Jared Jones, who's the twin brother of Jace Jones, who's had a phenomenal spring and off season. And he's a little bit more of our receiver out of the backfield and a little bit more of our outside zone and quick toss plays, to get on the perimeter. And so we kind of tease them and tell them they're, and call them thunder and lightning, because both of them bring a lot of really good intangibles to the table, and they're quite a bit different from each other in their style of play.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Always can use a couple of good backs there. So interested to see that dynamic. Want to turn your focus to the defensive side of the ball. Looks like you only losing a handful of starters. My count is 4. But who are some new names on that side of the ball that you're looking to have a big year and help fill those gaps?
Well, I mean, before I get into that, we're going to be led by our defensive line this year, which has got 6 seniors up front, led by Javon Hobson and J.D. Byrne and Keenan Hunter and a big group up there. So, I mean, our defense is going to go if they go. But speaking of some new guys, we got Chase Montgomery as a returner at linebacker. But really, I've been extremely encouraged by our corner play. We moved Trey Walton, who's been an offensive player in our program. He's been fantastic at corner. And then we got Wyatt Lucas, who was a receiver last year, caught a couple of touchdowns last year. He's playing the other corner. And then Elijah Fute, who's was our best freshman last year on our freshman team, really long and rangy, and is a member of our state running 4x1 team last spring as a freshman. So those 3 guys have done a phenomenal job throughout the off season. Great job in the spring game, and then in all the 7-on-7s we've done, they've done a great job.
Coach, I want to switch sides and talk about your offense. You return, by our numbers count, one of the top quarterbacks in the county, and he's following up one of the top quarterbacks probably in county history in A.J. Swan. 2nd year for Tanner Savas here as your starter. Also, I think, importantly, 2nd season under offensive coordinator Kevin Burnett. What can we expect from a growth standpoint out of Tanner and out of that offense this season?
The big thing last year is that, Coach Burnett came to us late. He was coaching lacrosse at Kell. so wasn't able to get here throughout the spring. But having him here on campus, he started meeting with our quarterbacks back in January and doing his little quarterback class with them, all the way down through our middle school, meeting with those guys a couple of mornings a week. And really, it's evident on the field because Tanner's understanding of our offense right now it's like having Coach Burnett on the field. So he understands every play that we run. It's really given us the opportunity to expand our playbook, where last year we were extremely limited just because of the learning process and Tanner being young. But we've really been able to expand the playbook, and we've got some serious weapons that he's got to get the ball to, that he has the opportunity to get the ball to. So, but he's done a great job. His accuracy is pinpoint, and he's shown that all through the summer. Really played well in our 7-on-7s and really had an outstanding spring game against River Ridge. And so he just continues to be dynamic and get better each and every week. And like I said, it's given us the opportunity to really expand things with him and really grow with him. So, and the crazy thing is he's only going to be a junior.
Yes, he's going to be one of those guys. Yeah. By the time we get to next year, we're going to feel like we've been calling his name for 7 or 8 years here in the county. Coach, talk about guys' names who we haven't been calling. I want to turn the attention to your offensive line. Now, I know you return a guy like Patrick Crowley, but you graduated a few kids, Michael Pugachow, J-Ron Tercero, a couple of names that come to mind. How was that offensive line shaping up along with Crowley this season?
Really, offensively, that's probably been where we've grown the most, is offensive line-wise. Alan Ortega, who's only a 2-year player, he's about 280 pounds. He's one of the strongest kids on our team. He plays guard for us. Started last year as a first-year player, and then he's just continued to grow. Doesn't say a word. The majority of the time, he's one of the greatest teammates we got on the team as well. Man, you want to talk about a leader. He leads by example and makes sure a lot of the things that I concern myself with locker room wise that he handles. But Patrick Crowley he'll be returning at right tackle. We'll have Spencer Kelly back at left tackle. Got a little battle at center between Courtney Minot Jr. and Nolan Painter. And then the other guard is actually going to be J.D. Byrne right now, who's been a 2-year starter on defense for us and is really, really good on the offensive line. So, and he hadn't played offensive line since back in his junior Warrior days. So, but what those guys have been able to do and the glue that they bring every day together and the way that they work together as a group has been really, really good.
And, Coach, one final question here for you before we let you go, and thank you for spending some time with us this evening. I want to ask about that wide receiver room. I know you mentioned that Savasier is going to have a lot of weapons to throw it to. I think we know some of the names. Wyatt Tash, a tight end. I know he's kind of slotted in there a little bit. And then Pops Jameson, Weston Bergman. But can you give us some guys that maybe I know that you had a couple different guys on the spring game that really showed up and showed out. Can you talk a little bit about that room?
Yeah, no. Grayson Sexton, who had a phenomenal, half of the spring game against River Ridge. He's a huge body. He's about 6'3", probably 210 pounds. We got Israel Conway, a.k.a. Izzy. He's another one. He's the kid that you want to be in the first one off the bus when you arrive at a visitor's place. So, he is a sight to see, and he's really worked his fanny off. Couldn't catch a cold a couple of years ago, and just a kid just really worked his butt off to be the best he can be. And that's the type of stuff that you really enjoy as a coach, as someone who was struggling as a youngster. And, you're talking about maybe moving him to DB, which is where they put all the guys that can't catch. And so, but then, he just worked his fanny off and he's really been a pleasant surprise. Like you mentioned, we got Jace Jones, we got Pops Jameson, we moved Malachi Eccles to the slot. So we've got quite a few weapons. Weston Bergman is actually going to be our starting free safety and hasn't really, gotten a lot of work offensively. So, we've got, I'm sure I'm leaving somebody out. I mean, there you mentioned Wyatt Tash. I mean, we can have Izzy, Tash, and Grayson on the field, and it's like having 3 tight ends. I mean, they're all over 6 foot, 6'2", 6'3", and just really big bodies with great hands. So they do a great job for us. And like I said, Coach Burnett's got to go to bed at night trying to dream of ways to get the ball to all these guys. So.
Well, no doubt, Coach. And just to echo, Izzy Conway is a young man that spent some time in the basketball program during his freshman and sophomore season, and again, a very physical specimen, and great to see his maturation on the football field. As Coach, as we wrap up with you this evening, we do want to say thank you for joining us, and as always, thanks for humoring us as we try to take shots at you. Nothing sticks to you. I tell you, you're like the Teflon Don, and we appreciate again you humoring us. Is there a message that you want to give to Warrior Nation as we get ready for your scrimmage that y'all be hosting next Friday? As you host the Creekview Grizzlies over there at Tommy Baker, any message or for Warrior Nation, not just for that preseason scrimmage, but for this upcoming season?
No, I mean, I think we're gonna really play some exciting football this year and give the fans something to get excited about, something to cheer about, and a lot of our kids are still only juniors, so there's a lot working for us in the future. And our mantra this year has been bring the juice, and we try to bring that each and every day in practice. So we're looking forward to having a successful season, and I'm really excited to see some of these dudes get out on the field and see how they perform. Live against the summer's great, but and your camps and 7-on-7s are great, but I'm looking forward to it carrying over to the fall. So, and the Warrior Nation comes. They pack our house up at Tommy Baker, and they travel well, and so we're just looking forward to giving them something really exciting to cheer about.
Well, that is awesome, Coach. We are sure you all will. Exciting young team last year, got a lot of experience to build on this year. We're excited to get out there and take a few games in over at Tommy Baker this season, and we look forward also to having you back on the podcast later on this season. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your evening to speak with us about the Warriors.
Sure. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Coach. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
All right. You as well.
Bye-bye. Coach Josh Shaw, man.
He's always so – I was poke fun at him.
Here's
the dynamic.
Go ahead.
All right.
Go ahead.
I started covering high school football professionally in 2018, and he's been the head coach at Cherokee the entire time. And Coach Teeter's been the head coach at Sequoia the entire time. And Cherokee has been in the playoffs, obviously, 5 years in a row. So it seems like I've talked to Shaw the most out of all of them, and Teeter the second most. And Shaw from the very beginning was always very welcoming, and Teeter was too. But Shaw was always like, just let yourself in, sit down, just come on in. And he's always been very laid back. And then you guys obviously have a dynamic as well. And introducing those two where he knows me so well and knows you so well, it's just like the perfect storm where who knows what's going to be said.
Oh, we try to keep it, family friendly.
Oh yeah. Of course. But he's such a good fella and really such a good coach, and glad that he's done so well at Cherokee and continuing with his 5-year playoff streak.
Absolutely. You're talking about played Milton very well last season. That's a team that you and I went to go watch them play. I believe it was in the quarterfinals. They hosted Grayson.
Yeah, that was it.
And they really kind of blew Grayson out of the water. Yeah. Maybe Grayson has some different history on that than us, but we were there. And a team that made a run to the Final Four. And then the year before that, a game we saw, their playoff game that we saw, Cherokee we saw, where they had a chance to knock off an impressive Norcross team and just fell a little short late in the game. So Cherokee is another team. We didn't talk about them much in that region about hosting a playoff game. But I do, if you can pull up your schedule. But before we talk about their schedule, region play, if this is a team that can avoid the number 4 seed this year, because let me tell you that the region crossover for Cherokee is region 8. So region 5 will play region 8. And for those of you who aren't up to snuff, that's the Buford Wolves. Now that would be one one thing if it was normal Buford. This is Buford with Dylan Raiola as their quarterback, who's transferred in as the number one quarterback prospect. He'll be attending the University of Georgia in the fall of 24. But in the fall of 23, he will be taking snaps for the Buford Wolves, and they are probably the the odds-on favorite here to make it to the state title game. I know I don't have to go back and look at the matchups. Carrollton might have something to say about that somewhere along the lines with Juju Lewis.
Maybe.
And a good and a well-coached team over there as well. But for Cherokee, let's get back to that. If you can avoid that number 4 seed and having to go play Buford, I like your chances in the first round.
Yeah, I agree. The thing about Cherokee is that region is really, really played up last year. It's historically not been that great. You kind of look at the top there and you think North Cobb and obviously Walton. They have a good history. But then you look at the rest of them. Wheeler, Osborne, Kennesaw Mountain, are any of those really teams that you just circle and just kind of feel the name? Not really. So is it unrealistic for Cherokee to go 3-2 in the region? I don't think so. I think they could pull off an upset against North Cobb depending on what they have. They're going to be in a transition year with some new players coming in. I know they lost that quarterback they had. I'm trying to remember his name right now. And I put you on the spot, and you're not going to remember it either.
Yes.
Yeah. Either way, you know who we're talking about. I think that North Cobb may be beatable. It'll be something to see once you get to that point, and it depends on Cherokee's growth. Again, it seems like that these Cherokee County coaches right now are big on offensive line. It seems like all of them are pretty content with their offensive line. And for Cherokee, if that defensive line really steps up like Coach Shaw was talking about there, then I like Cherokee's opportunities there because a good defensive line can really negate some explosive plays. So for Cherokee, I don't know. You look at the out-of-region schedule, obviously that first game against Cartersville, it is what it is. We'll see what Cartersville is. It's kind of like we talked about, Rome is Rome, Cedartown is Cedartown,
Sure.
Cartersville is Cartersville. And then they get to play, the Cherokee County gauntlet of Etowah, Woodstock, and Sequoia. Obviously, they don't play River Ridge or Creekview on their schedule. They handle those in the scrimmage games. And the spring scrimmage was very impressive. They did a great job against River Ridge with some of those younger guys that Coach Shaw was talking about there. It's going to be interesting to watch for sure. I think the Wheeler game will be a turning point for this team. If they can beat Wheeler, you feel really good about next week going to Osborne. And then, facing Walton, North Cobb, and Kennesaw Mountain, do you pull a win out of one of those three? I think yes, and that should keep you out of that fourth spot and should at least make you competitive moving into the playoffs.
Yeah, you talked about North Cobb, and they did have a young quarterback last season, kind of took over. Their other starter dealt with a lot of injury a lot of the season. Nick Grimstead is the returning starter's name. So North Cobb is always going to be a threat, a well-coached team. Coach Shane Queen does a good job over there. But again, you talked about a team like Wheeler that knocked off Cherokee last season with a big running back in Josiah Allen. How does Cherokee match up with them this season with another year under Coach Burnett? West Forsyth, a team that I know that's a non-region opponent, but as they get ready for their region schedule, I think that's going to be, to me, a game that's a barometer game to see how this will go. I mean, Wheeler maybe caught the Warriors off guard last season. We saw Josiah Allen in the scrimmage, and we thought to ourselves, wow, who is this guy? It was a physical Wheeler team, and I think that they have Cherokee's full attention. You mentioned Osborne. The turnaround they've done over there. Can they repeat that this year? Can they take the next step? I don't know. Walton just so powerful. They not only did they return their starting quarterback Jeremy Heklinski, who's been, I feel like he's been starting at Walton since he was in fourth grade. He's been there forever. You've got and then you get a transfer in. Daniel Calhoun, right, moving from Centennial to Walton.
Draw your own conclusion.
Yeah, to beef up that offensive line and a team that looks like they're ready to make a push to compete, maybe make a Final Four run in the Walton Raiders. So you got two stalwarts up there in Walton and North Cobb at the top. So maybe hosting a region game, you're going to have to pull off an upset. Kennesaw Mountain, a team that's going to be replacing their starting quarterback. A big physical team as well. So it'll be a good test for the Warriors. again, Coop, I think this is a team that it looks like it, with all intents and purposes, is going to match the county streak for, I believe, for home playoff or for playoff games with 7.
Yeah, I think that the best, if you were a betting man, and if there was a sports book that put this out there, which hopefully there's not, that would be weird.
What degenerate would bet on high school football?
Yeah,
Will?
I don't know. Well, I mean, you still owe me a Travis Scott meal, but we'll get over that. You know.
I mean, gosh, always bringing up old stuff, huh?
Well, but in all seriousness, if I was a betting man, I would say that Cherokee extending their playoff streak is probably the safest bet in Cherokee County this year, just because of the limited number of teams and the fact that I just don't see Osborne or Wheeler or Kennesaw Mountain. Again, they kind of went in and upset Kennesaw Mountain. I know we kind of forget about that, but we were at Allatoona, and we're sitting there looking at where we were going to go, and then all of a sudden you saw that final score, and, you know, that kind of end of the game was so crazy, and we're sitting there thinking, all right, well, you know, what's going on here? Right. So I don't know. I think that Cherokee could really establish themselves here, especially with Tanner Savasier. You know, if you remember A.J. Swan's junior year, they kind of hit that next level and kind of hit that second gear. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what happens here. You know, if Savasier can really take that step. Obviously the pieces around him sound pretty good. And I think that offensive line was the thing last year where we kind of sat and looked and said, all right, you know, they just rotated so many guys around. I remember you mentioned Michael Pugachow graduating. If I remember right, he played all 5 positions because of the injuries, where this guy would come back, then this guy would go out, and you slot him in, and all of that. If you can normalize that a little bit and just solidify that position group, I like Cherokee a lot. And Cherokee has had a history over the last 5 years of having a really good defense. They have some good athletes out there. He mentioned Trey Walton at corner. Watching Trey Walton reminds me a lot of Austin Trimble, who was at Cherokee. I think they're pretty similar in their style. I like that matchup there a lot. I think Trey Walton's going to be a good piece on the defensive side. So that's the way I view Cherokee. I think they're very young, very exciting. Again, he mentioned there's a lot of juniors on this team, and I think that for the next couple years, there's going to be a lot to look forward to over at Tommy Baker.
Yeah, there is. You mentioned a name like Austin Trimble, and how about you mentioned that Kennesaw Mountain game. Ryan Martin Jr. is the guy that sealed the deal for the Warriors and helped them punch their ticket to the playoffs. Again, they lose him to graduation, so much to be seen out of that secondary, and see if how they grow. I'm looking forward to watching them play, and I'm looking forward to taking in that scrimmage in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that'll be a great one. We'll be there for that one, so just get a little glimpse of what's going on.
So, Coop, we've talked to all the coaches. We've made it through. We're so grateful for them spending some time with us. We're grateful for you, our viewers, and our listeners that are taking some time to take in the preseason as we try to get you geared up for high school football that is right around the corner. The Woodstock Wolverines actually have a scrimmage this coming Friday night, August the 4th, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, they'll be hosting the Cambridge Bears. Yep. We may or may not be in the building to take that in.
Maybe. If you see us, come up, say hey.
Absolutely. Coop, now it's time
to make everyone mad.
I mean, I have no problem. There's 2 things I know about me. Like, I have no problem with making a statement, and I have no problem with putting my foot in my mouth when I make that statement. Yep. So I've done that time in, time again. So probably my power rankings are probably the most trash of all.
Whatever he says is it. Just go ahead and just hope you're not number 1.
I have to I have to go back to my rankings because I honestly didn't memorize them. I'm probably sure you memorized them for me. Do we want to go 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or do we want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
Dealer's choice.
Let's go from the bottom to the top. Okay. All right, and I'll try to remember
which one you did.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask you to help me out. Is that what I had there? I think that's what I had.
Yeah, it looks right.
Yeah. Okay. At number 6, I've got Woodstock.
I do too. It's not a knock on them. It's just the reality of where they're at. The rebuilding. I think that's the honest answer. But I for Woodstock fans, I want to preface that that's not a bad thing. I think that there's a version of that, an intimacy to watching a team rebuild. It's a lot of fun. We went through that with Gilmer County a couple years ago. That was a lot of fun to watch them learn how to win, and it's going to be fun. They're going to play physical brand of ball. They're not going to disappoint you. So I would really, really, really tell Wolverines fans to give them a shot and give them an opportunity and give them a little time to grow.
Yeah, number 5, I think this is where we fall off the rails here. I'm probably I might not get invited into this stadium at number 5. I've got Etowah, which is crazy because I think they have 2 of the most exciting offensive players in the county, and Xavier Mahoney, who is a human highlight reel, and then Reese Weir, a guy that maybe won't get 1,000 yards because of Mahoney there in the backfield with him, but maybe one of the best 1-2 punches in the county. But I've got Etowah. I think it's not that Etowah is that bad. I think that everybody in front of them is that good, and maybe I've been brainwashed by Coach Collins about how good his offensive line is coming along and defensive line is coming along.
So my number 5 is Creekview.
Okay.
Here's what I would argue with Etowah. Your statement on Etowah is purely defensive. That's your concern with Etowah.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a better group. I think that the defense is going to be a little better this year. And I think that offense doesn't have to do a ton more, but I think they'll find a way to get a little bit more.
Okay.
So that's why I have them there. I have Creekview at number 5. Again, with knowing where the county is, Creekview and River Ridge are those teams that you sit there and you say, I just don't know what to expect. They're going to have a new offensive coordinator, and Coach Williams calling the plays. That running back room is going to be very young. That's good because I think an injury doesn't hurt you as much anymore as it did last year. That defense is going to be good. The home and away splits, I know Coach Williams addressed it. That really bothers me. And when you're talking about standings and the fact that you do get Sequoia and River Ridge at home, but you do have to go to Etowah, I just have a hard time looking at that and just ignoring that from last season. If we get, to the end of week 4 and they're, winning games on the road or at least look better,
sure,
I'm happy to go back on that. Again, this is all bulletin board material anyway. But yeah, I think Creekview's number 5. It's not number 5 by a lot, but they just have a little bit more to prove to me in terms of those things.
Sure. And I think both you and I are probably, 3, 4, 5, we can probably shuffle them.
They're
up
interchangeable a little bit. It's just some things we don't know.
But we have to make a stand and make a point, right?
Exactly.
So or make a pick.
Yeah.
At number 4, I've got the River Ridge Knights coming in. I really like that offense. I think in terms of versatility, the amount of yards that Spectre passed for last season, it is going to be a question mark whether they can replace the production of a guy like Jackson Head. But Camden Cox had a fantastic freshman season. I think we'll see more of him. Coughlin joins him in the backfield. If Thomas Thompson and Grant Hollier can become the receivers that we think and that Coach Collins thinks they can be, then I think this is a team to look out for.
Yeah, I like them offensively. It's just the defensive line and experience is what concerns me. Cherokee seemed to get the better of them in that spring scrimmage, and I know it's a spring scrimmage, so you have to kind of take that with a grain of salt. But sitting here right now without seeing their scrimmage coming up the next couple of weeks, it's concerning to me. So I have River Ridge at number 4 as well. I think that there's an opportunity where, with the talent they have, and Coach Collins talking about that offensive line, I think that it could be where they outscore people and that they put up 30 points a game, and the defense doesn't have to be great. They got pieces there, obviously. So I don't strongly feel River Ridge at number 4. I'm not locked into that, but that's where I would put them sitting here.
No, non-committal.
Well, I just committed. I put them at number 4.
Okay. I mean, I don't know. We both put them at number 4. We might have just put our meatball subs in jeopardy.
Yeah. Oh, well.
We'll hear about it.
Yeah, we will.
I know we'll hear about it, but probably before we get home.
No cupcakes this year.
Number 3, I've got the Creekview Grizzlies. I am impressed with the depth at running back. I know that probably the thing that is more concerning is the inexperience at running back. I think you've got 4 guys back there that all bring something different to the table. You throw in a quarterback who's mobile as well, and Austin Guest. My big concern with Creekview, and this is probably every team in the county this season, the home run threat at receiver is not there. They're consistent. I think they're consistent, but will they have the ability to stretch the field? I like the experience coming back on the offensive line. We talked about 3 starters on the defensive line, Thomas, Griffin Jane, I believe, another starter up front, and then gosh, now
I know, got put on the spot.
Beckett Singleton.
Yeah, Beckett Singleton.
Last one, so I like that. My other concern, I think, for the Grizzlies is back in the secondary. The defense has always been attacking. I feel like that's been the one consistency, and that's one of the reasons why I feel like the Grizzlies are the number 3 team in the county at this coming into this season.
Does the home and away stuff not bother you from last year?
Not as much. Okay. I think the game that concerns me the most is Etowah.
I agree.
Because of their explosiveness and because that's on the road. I like the fact that Creekview gets Sequoia at home. I like the fact that they get River Ridge at home.
I agree with that. I think that the home and away splits favor them heavily this year. It just would bother me to know that that's still a problem.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But I think it can be coached out. I got number 3 at Etowah. I just think that the offense is really, really, really good. That wide receiver core is going to be really good. If Mahoney can get to where he throws the ball a little bit further down the field, and it doesn't have to be 25 yards, just 12 yards, stuff like that. I really like that. Obviously, we know what Reese Weir can do. Tate Nelms on the offensive line, such a big part of that group. Coach Kemper, his specialty is offensive line. I trust him to develop the guys around there. And then defensively, I just think that they're going to be better than last year. Vinny Pacini, watching him, his tape, I already mentioned him. He's great. Draven Cole, I think, is going to have a big year. And then Joshua Harding up the middle. I just think they have pieces, and it doesn't take a ton around those guys to make it work. And obviously the new defensive coordinator going to be trying to make that all put together. But I just think that Etowah could have the philosophy of we're just going to outscore you. And I think that them putting up 30 points a game isn't all that unrealistic on a good day. To me, I think that that's going to be Etowah's philosophy, and it won't take a ton for the defense to adjust to that. So, again, that's one of those things that I say, and I'm optimistic about it, but I'm also realistic enough to understand that are they that much ahead of Creekview and River Ridge right now? No.
Yeah, I think, again, those 3 teams are quarterback play is going to be big, and then if those guys can take that next level, how dangerous would Mahoney be if he was a 60% passer, and that with that threat for him to run, to hand the ball off to the Buffalo, and again that I know we're talking they're your number 3 team. I want to go back to Draven Cole, and he's a guy that I think we saw he and Harding play after play after play after play. Alatoona game, if I recall, we were calling his name, and they were really attacking his side because he's a little bit undersized on the defensive line. Yeah. But as Coach Kemper mentioned, kind of late in the season, he played some of his best football.
Yeah, and it just takes a couple of pieces around those guys.
Sure.
And I think that's the biggest thing is that, when you're ranking concerns, personnel is a smaller issue when it comes to, like, the defensive side of the ball. And I think that's where I'm gauging that because I feel really good about the offense. I just don't see where they're going to be held to 17 points a game, 20. I just don't see that.
Very rarely.
Yeah. It'll be a great defense. Yeah, they can do it, but it just won't be every
Rome.
Friday. Rome, Sequoia.
Sure.
Creekview can do it, I think, if they have the right, personnel. But as far as when you're playing, that outer region schedule, am I worried that Etowah is going to be held to 14 points? No. 21?
Probably not.
I mean, 28, 35, that's probably where they're at.
On par.
Yeah.
And you got to think they're going to be better than they were last year.
Correct. Yeah, so that's my estimation. So that's why I have them at 3.
Well, that leaves 2 teams.
Which we agree.
Spoiler alert. It's Cherokee Warriors. I mean, we're talking about a team, again, that went 3-8 last season, all right, and qualified for the playoffs.
Right. Well, so, I think it's not based on entirely record.
Okay.
I think 3-8 for them is different when you looked at the fact they played Cartersville, and then they play in 7A. And I don't want to upset anybody, but the region that Cherokee plays in, I would argue, is a little tougher than the region that our 6A teams play in. Last year especially. Wheeler was very, very above average for normal. Kennesaw Mountain was a good team. They were ranked in the top 10 in 7A for a couple of weeks. And then Wheeler and Walton and North Cobb were obviously upper echelon teams. I don't know if that'll be the case this year. Depends largely on how Cherokee County as a whole does. But I do think that Cherokee made a lot of great strides. They play Milton very well. And for Milton to go on and just run through Grayson the next week, that says a lot about how Cherokee was. They don't lose anything. You look at the defensive side of the ball, they lose 4 starters, and they're replacing those with guys that the coaches feel really good about. Watching the tape on them, I would personally feel pretty good about them. There's just not a ton of guys out there that you just say, man, if we just had him, this would be better than last year. I don't see it that way. I think they're going to be improved.
Yeah, I will say they don't lose. They lose those 4. I think Kyan Simmons is a big piece to replace on that defensive side, and then Ryan Martin is probably in terms of a leadership role. But with Kyan battling some injuries throughout the season, you had a chance, for that defensive line to kind of to button up a little bit and give Chase Montgomery at the linebacker spot some opportunity to improve. Coming in that season that was last year was Chase's first year starting. I believe he was his first or second leading tackler for the Warriors at that middle backer spot. So you have a experienced team coming back. And I think that Savasier with Burnett and that wide receiver core, who, as I look around the county, I think is the best group in the county.
Yeah, I think
and maybe one of the fastest groups in the county. I don't know if there's a deep vertical threat, but
I think there is.
These guys in space, and then the size of those receivers that Shaw was talking about, Conway and Tash and Sexton. Those guys over 6'2", those big physical receivers. And you talked about it, Will. If I'm matching up 6'2", 6'3" against a nickel or a dime, safety or third or fourth option, I like my chances with Grayson Sexton, and then you throw in Jace Jones on the outside as well.
Yeah, and you talk about the Thunder and Lightning combination at running back. You get a couple of those guys that can swing out of the backfield. I mean, it's just I think Cherokee's philosophy has been 4 wide receivers, 3 wide receivers, out of the gun. I think you continue that and continue to spread them out. Say your fourth corner is not going to cover my 6'3" receiver, and good luck with it. And I think that's Cherokee's philosophy. So, and I like Savasier. I think Savasier is not as mobile as like Austin Guest, kind of a comp there, but he's more of a pocket passer, and I think his ability to deliver the ball to a spot is what sets him apart, and I like that in this offense. I think that's going to be really good for them. So that's why I have Cherokee at number 2.
All right, and so that leaves, no suspense.
Yeah, sorry.
Sequoia, we're going to start them off where they left off last season.
Yeah, and here's the reason why. The defense, they're filling the gaps. They lost a couple of defensive line players. They obviously lost some pieces in the secondary. It's just the whole group played so well last year that when you combine them back together and you say, oh, we're missing this piece and that piece, you obviously don't know how the chemistry is going to be, but with Coach Buddy there running that defense, I just feel really good about the defensive side. And then the offensive side, Colby Martin having another year. Coach Teeter talked about him in the weight room getting a little bit more oomph on the ball. I love that. And then, if Ian Mariah comes back and plays football this year, Jackson Hancock can be used both ways. Tyler Bell can be used both ways. They got a couple of receivers that look pretty good. And that offensive line is returning those core guys, which in that system, your 2 guards and your center are like the most important pieces of that. That is so important for them. And I think that's why Sequoia is going to be number 1 again this year. And it's not so much – they're kind of grandfathered into it. These other teams could easily jump in. They just have to show us that they're willing to compete on that level. And it starts with the defense. They're going to have to crack the code of the defense because – as you mentioned, 8 points per game against county opponents last year. That is unreal.
Yeah, it's a job well done by Coach Buddy, coaching those guys up. And again, it's who's gonna figure out how to score. We saw that Creekview game where Creekview dominated time of possession early in the game, dominated field position early, but Sequoia just bent but never broke.
Right.
In that. Ultimately, while the defense didn't score, it was special teams that made a play that turned the tide. It was their defense not giving in when Creekview had a few chances inside the 40-yard line to change the outcome of that game.
Yeah, so that's our power rankings, if you will, to start things off. So I'm sure that everybody will agree with us and nobody will say anything.
Oh, if that'll be a first. If that happens, I might retire, Coop. I don't know. I want to take a look, just at crossover if we could. We talked about region Class 7, and we'll start with that since there's only one team. But that crossover is a region with Buford, Central Gwinnett, Collins Hill, Dacula, excuse me, Mill
Florida.
Creek. Yeah, I know. It just like it's Dahlonega, not Dahlonega, right? And then Mountain View. You look at Mill Creek, the defending state champ, losing a couple of all-stars.
Caleb Downs
at Alabama, and then their quarterback
Tyler Lockwood, something like that.
In any event,
something like that.
Yeah, something like that. We already mentioned Buford. Collins Hill, the state champ 2 years ago, resides in this region. So teams with experience in terms of been there, done that. But outside of Buford, I think there's still a lot of question marks here. And, I don't know how well Central Gwinnett will fare in that mix, and I think Mountain View might be those two might be battling for that fourth playoff spot. But you got to figure that Mill Creek, Decula, and Collins Hill will be fighting for that home field position.
Yeah, they're beatable though. That's what I would say and they may not be. We may get to this and they find out they have some superstar. Those Gwinnett County schools kind of tend to do that.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, is it Collins Hill that scares you? Not necessarily. They had a pretty average year last year. Decula was down. Decula hasn't been good for the last couple of years, I don't think. They've had a real tough go of it moving up to 7A. They ran 6A for a while there. And then obviously you mentioned Mill Creek was very good last year. But in Gwinnett County, those schools are not the upper echelon of Gwinnett County schools. They're not with Parkview. They're not with Brookwood. They're in a little lower class. So obviously Buford separates themselves out of that mix in a big way, but just don't be the fourth seed. Like you said, we said that last year with 6A against Langston Hughes. Don't be the fourth seed. That's the message again here with Cherokee, guys. I mean, those wins are super important. So, and I know that coaches are never looking ahead at that, but that has to be in the back of Cherokee's coaching staff's mind because Lord knows what happens if you have to end up going to Buford.
Yeah, it's probably not going to end up well for anyone they face out of Region 5. Coop, as we turn the page to 6A, crossover in the playoffs is going to be Region 7. I'm going in alphabetical order here. Alpharetta, Blessed Trinity, Johns Creek, Lassiter, Pope, Roswell, and Sprayberry.
Yeah.
I think you want to stay out of Roswell's way if you can. I'm taking a look at this, and I'm going to, preliminary. I'm saying, Roswell number 1, Blessed Trinity number 2, and then I think it's Alpharetta, Sprayberry. I don't know which order. Alpharetta's going to be an interesting mix. They lose their starting quarterback, Ben. Gosh, I can't remember his last name. Guthrie.
Oh, Ben Guthrie,
who's to graduation. But Coach Curvin looks like he has the Raiders moving in the right direction. Blessed Trinity gets Coach Ed Dudley, who's kind of been there, done that, experienced coach coming in this season. They've got a returning quarterback. I'm going to give you a name of a freshman impact player in Region 7 that I believe will turn some heads. DJ Jacobs. He is probably end up on the defensive line already at 6'3", and probably about 215, 220. He is a impressive young man, but son of former UGA player David Jacobs, and a team to watch out for. I think Blessed Trinity, those top two teams, I think Roswell, Blessed Trinity, separated only by Highway 92. Will look to be 1 and 2 in that region, and I think you're looking at Alpharetta, like I said, Alpharetta, Sprayberry. Pope had a down year last year. Lassiter loses their starting quarterback. It'll be interesting to see where they are. And Johns Creek had a tough go of it after losing several starters from a very impressive football team that we were able to see, a physical football team. They'll have a new head coach as well.
Yeah, I think Johns Creek may be a wild card there. I think that they have the ability to make waves, but I agree with you. I think it's Blessed Trinity and Roswell where they end up in that dynamic. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not sold that Roswell's going to be the superpower that they were last year. I think that they may be beatable depending on how the county looks. But I think a fair comparison to Roswell's probably Rome right now. I think that those programs are in a similar state. So depending on how you see Cherokee County teams fare against Rome will be a good measuring stick. And I think, again, the key is to host a playoff game in this time. I think Allatona's in a period of transition. They have a great history. Right now they're not as fired up as they normally are. So I think that there's an ability for a Cherokee County team to host. And if you can do that, then that makes a world of difference. So that's what I would say, is that you end up going from a matchup against Roswell or Blessed Trinity to Sprayberry, Alpharetta, Pope maybe, Johns
Sure.
Creek maybe. But I think that the odds of winning those games increase exponentially as you climb up those seeds. And I think that, even being a 3 seed is not the end of the world.
No, it's not, but I just don't think you want to have to try to tackle Nakai Davenport, who we saw, or KJ Smith at quarterback, or Brooks Goodman returns for Blessed Trinity. So you kind of want to stay out of those guys' way if you can. But again, I think at 3 seed, Blessed Trinity is a team that if they are the 2 seed in Region 7, it's not a long trip over to Roswell or Alfred or Sprayberry for that matter.
Right.
So you're not getting on the bus and going to South Paulding or Langston Hughes this
Yes.
time. But in any event, I think it's out there for at least one of our county teams to make a push to the second round, which we haven't seen in it's been 5 years.
Yeah, it's been a long time. It's been a long time. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that this year, I predict there will be a playoff game winner in the county somewhere.
Okay.
If not a couple.
All right.
I think that's very
I
possible.
like to hear that.
Yeah.
Coop, I think we've gone through the entire kickoff show. No breaks, no commercial breaks. But speaking of commercials, again, we mentioned them coming in. We want to mention them as we kind of wrap this thing up. Our sponsors, you see them back there on the screen: Foundation Financial, Insurance and Wealth Management. Guys, if you're looking for somebody to take a look at your insurance, wealth management questions, just want to give these guys, just to kind of chat with them to see they might have an option for you. Give Ronnie a call, right? Give Lewis a call.
Mm-hmm.
Even give Coop a call.
Yeah, can.
All right. I like that. I like that.
Yeah, throw my little plug in there.
Yeah, okay. Hey, look, we do appreciate Foundation Financial allowing us to come in to their studio and host our Cherokee County preseason kickoff show.
Yeah, we're so thankful for all of you sticking with us. Obviously, this was our first broadcast here on the North Georgia Sports Network and the first episode of the North Georgia Sports Report, which, again, this will be a year-round opportunity, except for summer. There's no sports going on in summer in high school.
We got to take a break at some point,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. But we're going to be around all year long. We're so excited for this football season. Again, thank you to all 6 Cherokee County coaches. Thank you to all 6 Cherokee County schools for allowing us to infiltrate your space and letting us be part of this. This is what it's all about. And thank you to the fans. Again, you guys made last year so special for us doing the podcast, and we're excited to start this new one with you. And we're excited to meet some new folks, see some old friends. We'll be out and about this year. Stay tuned to the website. Again, that's northgasportsnetwork.com. We're going to be posting some informational stuff about what the broadcast will look like and what you need to know, because we're planning on doing that. And then follow all the socials. We're on all of them. We're with all the kids now. We got Instagram, Facebook, X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, TikTok, YouTube, where you're watching this, and then obviously the website. So please make sure you stay tuned for all of that. I promise that it will be worth your while. We got a lot of fun things planned. This is going to be a really fun time, and it's going to be a different experience for the fans. So I'm excited for it.
I'm excited, and I'm excited again to be partnering with you, Coop. This has been I feel like it's been a long time in the making, and glad we can get together and make this happen on North Georgia Sports Network and the North Georgia Sports Report, the podcast. We won't have an episode next week,
right?
But coming into the regular season, we'll blast that out on all of our socials again, as we mentioned before. But again, as Will mentioned, thank you guys so much for sticking with us for 3 hours of the Cherokee County football preseason show.
Yeah, and again, North Georgia Sports Network will be available Podbean, iTunes, Google, and Spotify. Those are all 4 on there now. If you have one that you would like it to be added to, again, we're very accessible. Just send us a message, and I'm happy to add it to whatever platform you choose. It's not difficult. Getting it on Apple was the hard part, so happy to be accessible to everyone.
So there we have it.
There you have it, folks. So until next time, we will see you all again. Art, let's play my